Chapter 1569. Strange. Xiao Hua scratched his head and thought to himself, if the 12th layer of qi refining is said to have completely refined the meridians, then the meridians in heavenly law embodiment technique clearly haven't reached the end. It seems that there are still many more meridians in dragonization art. Why does vigorous thunderbolt require one to reopen different meridians in the lower dantian to cultivate? This was Xiao Hua. He was cultivating the dragonization art at the same time as cultivating a normal technique. Previously, he could sense the various meridians in the 11th layer of qi refining. Moreover, he also knew that there were many interconnected meridians around these meridians. If it was someone else, how could they know? Could it be this heavenly law embodiment technique isn't a complete set of qi refining techniques? Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly thought of this. However, he immediately denied it. He had already read this technique from beginning to end. If it wasn't a complete technique, he would have already said it out loud. In other words, the possibility that Xiao Hua thought of didn't exist. Could it be behind this heavenly law embodiment technique, there are still unrecorded techniques? Xiao Hua suddenly quivered. An even more outrageous thought appeared in his mind. Only this thought could explain Xiao Hua's perception of those meridians when cultivating the dragonization art. Hee, what's wrong with me? Is it the heart devil of the 11th layer of qi refining? After Xiao Hua's excitement, he immediately calmed down. Qi refining techniques had been cultivated for who knows how many years in the Xiaoyu continent. Who knows how many heavenly geniuses there were, and who knows how many people had extraordinary encounters. Everyone directly entered foundation establishment after reaching the 12th layer of qi refining. There had never been a person who cultivated to the 13th layer after reaching the 12th layer of qi refining. Maybe I'm ignorant and inexperienced? I've never heard of it? Maybe those people were all geniuses who achieved great magical powers, but there are no records of them in the ancient records? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua put these things down. Right now, he was still some distance away from the peak of the 11th layer of qi refining. There was no need to delve into it now. When he returned to Myriad Thunder Valley in the future, he would ask Xiang Yang or Helplessness. If not, he would go to Thunder Palace's Technique Imparting Pavilion to investigate. In the following 10 months, Xiao Hua wholeheartedly focused on refining pills, taking pills, and increasing his cultivation. While refining pills, he also began to practice the Thunderlight Evasion technique and the driving techniques of magic tools. It was precisely as Xiao Hua had expected earlier. This Thunderlight flight technique was extremely profound, and it wasn't something common flying techniques could compare to. The first step to cultivating the Thunderlight flight technique required one to possess a lightning attribute physique. Only with this physique would one be able to sense the lightning attribute spirit energy within the spirit energy of heaven and earth, and only then would one be able to borrow the flexibility and strength of the lightning attribute spirit energy to cultivate the flight technique. Fortunately, Xiao Hua had already practiced fire escape and earth escape. Although this lightning escape technique wasn't a pure 5 elements escape technique, it was still within the 5 elements. Therefore, Xiao Hua had some difficulties practicing it, but he still gradually learned it. Among them, what Xiao Hua didn't understand the most was that he was actually able to sense the lightning attribute spiritual qi that troubled cultivators of other attributes. This was the most crucial step. As long as he took this step, his future path would be smooth and level. While Xiao Hua was practicing the lightning evasion technique in the eastern ridge, he was still thinking, could it be because of the thunder-devouring bead? There are flashes of lightning in my space from time to time. Maybe it has something to do with this? As for whether it was true or not, what did it matter? Xiao Hua was already gradually getting familiar with the first level of the Thunderlight flight technique. Furthermore, although the common method of refining magic tools was convenient, it also had its disadvantages. Different cultivation levels could refine different magic tools. With Xiao Hua's cultivation level, he couldn't refine high-level magic tools. Not to mention the magic tools used by late Foundation establishment stage cultivators in Xiao Hua's space. Even the Shadow Moon Xiao Hua that Ling Jingyi gave him couldn't be refined. Xiao Hua used 10 months of effort to refine the triangular magic tool of Spirit Husbandry Sect and the palm-sized ring of Yin Yen Wei. The magic tool of Spirit Husbandry Sect was an offensive and defensive magic tool. It could use the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to attack, and it could also form a protective barrier around the user. The most special thing was that it could change the outer appearance of the cultivator and conceal the ripples of the cultivator's magic power, achieving the goal of concealment. Xiaohua didn't know the name of this magic tool. Since it was his, he naturally had to give it his own name. Xiaohua scratched his head and thought for a long time before naming it Yichun. As for the palm-sized ring, it didn't have any offensive or defensive abilities. The only thing it could do was to see through the 5 elements. Yin Yanwei relied on this thing to see through the restrictions set up by Blood Shadow and Xiaohua's figure underground. Xiaohua named it Observe. Naturally, Xiaohua had also thought of using these magic tools to activate the Black Iron Needle. However, after looking at the sacrificial refining method and then looking at the trick behind the Black Iron Needle, Xiaohua still decided to use the sacrificial refining method. In Xiaohua's space, there was a set of 2 soul-absorbing bells. Xiaohua felt that they were similar to the small hook's soul tool and wanted to refine them. Unfortunately, the common refining method in Xiaohua's hand wasn't effective. He probably needed the refining method specifically used by Xiaonan's Cheng family. Seeing that he had cultivated all the techniques he could in the past year, and that his heavenly reflection technique had just reached the peak of the 11th level of the Qi refinement realm, Xiaohua couldn't help but be overjoyed. It wasn't just his cultivation that was effective. Xiaohua's refining of medicinal pills was also very smooth. Now, he could already produce 24 soul-absorbing pills in one furnace, which was barely enough for Xiaohua's nighttime cultivation speed. During the day, Xiaohua could only refine medicinal pills while practicing lightning escape and familiarizing himself with the magic tools. In addition, Little Huang and Little Silver in the space had also changed a lot. Let's talk about Little Huang first. A year ago, after swallowing Qin Mingwei's primordial spirit, it had fallen into a deep sleep. While sleeping, Xiaohua could clearly sense that Little Huang's injuries had healed. Half a year ago, Little Huang had woken up. Although it hadn't fully recovered, it looked a lot more spirited and could already slowly fly around in the space. As for Little Silver, he had rendered meritorious service in saving Xiaohua's life last time. Even his sharp teeth had been grinded until they bled. So how could Xiaohua not be grateful? When Little Dusk slept, Little Silver only moved within a range of several zhang and never took half a step out of the minefield. However, Little Silver's nose kept sniffing the spirit herbs. It was just that without Little Huang's permission, Little Silver didn't dare steal any. It wasn't until Little Huang woke up and told Xiaohua about this that Xiaohua found out that Little Silver could eat spirit herbs. Wasn't that simple? Xiaohua might not be willing to part with spirit stones, but he had as many spirit herbs as he wanted in the space. Xiaohua took out a piece of the extremely vast medicinal field in the space. There were some ordinary spirit herbs inside, just that they had been growing for a long time. He had Little Silver look for food in this medicinal field. Little Silver was very happy. It scurried around the entire herb field and rolled around casually, eating until its little belly was round and full. Little Yellow was also very happy to see this. AI, it's so good to be able to cultivate in peace. Xiaohua looked around the space from time to time and sighed with emotion. This scene was something he hadn't dared imagine when he was an itinerant cultivator. All right, I've now reached the peak of the 11th level of Qi refinement. It's time for me to make a trip back to Myriad Thunder Valley. Admittedly, there's a rainbow epiphyllum in my space, but Shifu needs to go to Shuttling Thunder Hall to ask for another one. It'll be a waste if I don't take it. Xiaohua thought to himself. Also, it's time to ask Shifu about the cultivation technique. Let's see if I can go to Martial Arts Pavilion to find it now. Just as Xiaohua was about to pack up and leave, he thought again. Good, I almost forgot. It's almost a year's time, and that senior brother Jinming who came to Eastern Ridge to pick inflammation donggrass is coming again. If I run off now, won't he have to return empty-handed again? Thus, after Xiaohua picked enough inflammation donggrass in advance, he calmly stayed in Eastern Ridge to refine pills and wait for Jinming's arrival. Almost a month's time passed. Sure enough, the command medallion in the space vibrated again. When Xiaohua slightly released the restriction on the formation, a crimson-red messaging talisman flew in front of Xiaohua's eyes. In, he's finally here. Xiao Hua crushed the messaging talisman and flew into the air. He opened the formation and saw a thin and tall young cultivator with a trace of impatience on his face. He was precisely waiting in midair outside the formation. Xiao Hua carefully sized him up. This cultivator looked to be about 27 or 28 years old. He had long and narrow cheeks, extremely small eyes, a pair of extremely light eyebrows, and a few black spots on his deathly pale face. When the cultivator saw Xiao Hua come out to greet him, he didn't even salute. He very rudely called out, "Are you Xiao Hua?" Xiao Hua smiled and bowed. This disciple is indeed Xiao Hua. Is senior brother Jinming? Humph, naturally it's I. Jinming wasn't surprised. He sneered and said, if it wasn't for I's bad luck, who would come to this Eastern Ridge medicinal garden? Xiao Hua smiled apologetically and said, this disciple was negligent last year and let senior brother Jinming accompany me to receive punishment. This disciple's heart truly feels apologetic. Don't say those useless things. Jinming unexpectedly didn't want to talk to him. Where's this year's flame dong grass? Don't tell me you still want I to personally go harvest it? Xiao Hua smiled and said, this naturally isn't necessary. As he spoke, he took out his storage pouch and handed it over. He said, this disciple has already harvested this flame dawn grass long ago. Senior brother, please take a look. Jinming slightly nodded. He took the pouch and opened it to take a look. He was somewhat astonished. Your harvesting technique is quite brilliant. Xiao Hua replied, this disciple is only of this little use. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come here so eagerly. Good. Jinming only said one word. He took back the storage pouch and nodded. He said, this year's matter is already done. You should properly take care of the medicinal garden. As he spoke, he seemed to have thought of something. He slapped his forehead and said, that's right. Did you take a lot of seeds from the Thunder Flash Hall last year? Xiao Hua replied, yes. Does senior brother need something? Naturally, I need to inspect it. Jinming pointed with his finger and said, open the formation. I want to see where you've planted these spirit grasses. Xiao Hua obeyed and opened the formation. He led Jinming to the place where he planted the spirit grasses. -7. Chapter 1570. Looking at the flat herb garden and some small sprouts, Jinming nodded slightly, then lectured, how can you grow other spirit herbs in this kind of place? I don't know what you're thinking. Disciple has nothing to do, so I want to see if I can grow other spirit herbs. If I can, that would be great, but if I can't, I'll just waste some seeds. As you wish. Jinming waved his hand and was about to fly away when Xiao Hua stopped him. He patted his storage pouch and took out a few jade bottles and some spirit stones, then handed them over. He said very sincerely, this is Disciple's 2 months' worth of provisions last year. Because of Disciple, senior brother Jinming was punished with a year's worth of provisions. Disciple knows that these provisions can't compare to senior brother's, but they are Disciple's good intentions, so please accept them. Jinming obviously didn't expect Xiao Hua to give him pills and spirit stones. He thought for a moment, then waved his hand and the items fell into his hand. His pale face showed a trace of a smile and said, since you have such thoughts, I won't be disrespectful. Seeing Jinming accept the pills, Xiao Hua's heart could be considered to have been put down. He smiled and said, farewell, senior brother Jinming. Good. We'll meet again next year. Jinming said as he flew into the air. However, after flying for a few dozen feet, he turned back and reminded, oh right, Xiao Hua, I still haven't found the spare token for the Eastern Ridge formation. Your formation isn't very safe, so you have to be careful. Thank you for the reminder, senior brother. Xiao Hua smiled and said, aside from flame dong grass, there's only flame dong grass here. It's far inferior to other herb gardens, so who would come here? Besides, disciple is only a chi refining disciple, and my cultivation is shallow. Others won't put me in their eyes. It's always better to be careful. Unfortunately, this spell formation is only for defensive purposes. It doesn't have any offensive capabilities. Otherwise, I forgot that there are 2 command medallions. Smiling wryly, Zhenming clasped hands and flew out of the eastern ridge, heading back to the Lightning Flash Temple. Seeing that Zhenming had left, Xiaohua smiled and said, "This year's mission is over. I don't have anything to do for the next year. Looks like I have to make a trip to the Myriad Thunder Valley." After that, Xiaohua tidied up a little, opened the formation, and used the lightning escape technique that he had just learned, and flew in the direction of the 10,000 Thunder Valley. The lightning evasion technique was indeed formidable. It was more than half as fast as Xiaohua's flight technique. However, this lightning evasion technique consumed a lot of magic power. After flying for a while, Xiaohua switched back to his original flight technique. Along the way, Xiaohua was careful. He looked at the map while flying. As long as there were dangerous and forbidden areas, he would stay far away from them, so he didn't encounter any danger. On the contrary, along the way, they encountered a lot of aura refining and foundation building disciples. There was even a grandmaster in the Gold Core realm. Xiaohua respectfully stopped for these seniors with profound cultivation bases and politely let them go first. He received quite a lot of smiles. Seeing his master's immortal's cave, Xiaohua landed. That mountain ape immediately pounced out from the mountain forest. It stretched out its arms and revealed a pair of sharp claws to grab Xiaohua. Xiaohua frowned. He waved his hand and cast a confinement technique. The mountain ape was bound almost without any resistance. It fell to the ground in an instant and let out a roar. Immediately, two divine senses came from the helpless immortal's cave and Xiangyang's immortal's cave respectively. They scanned Xiaohua's body. Of these two divine senses, Xiaohua was very familiar with one of them. It was eldest senior brother Xiangyang. He didn't encounter the other one. Since it wasn't helpless, then it should be Zhuo Minghui's. Sure enough, not long after the two divine senses were retracted, Xiangyang flew over with a smile on his face. Seeing that Xiaohua's cultivation base was already at the peak of the 11th layer of aura refining, he was very happy and said, "Little junior brother is indeed a genius. I haven't seen you for just a year, and you've made great progress. I can see that you're already a cultivator at the 12th layer of aura refining." Xiaohua wryly smiled. "Eldest senior brother, I'm suffering in the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden by myself. You didn't even come to see me. Otherwise, I might have already reached foundation establishment by now." "What?" Xiangyang was surprised at first, then he laughed out loud and said, "You little brat, I was afraid of delaying your cultivation, so I didn't dare to go. What's so hard about you? After you reach foundation establishment, I'll ask my wife-in-law to help you find a suitable dual cultivation partner in the Thunder Palace. At that time, let's see if you'll still complain or not." Hearing this, Xiaohua quickly waved his hand and said, "Forget it, eldest senior brother. Let me go find one myself. Who knows what kind of person my wife will find." "Oh, little junior brother, you don't trust your wife's eyes?" Yin Qinglian also flew over. No. Xiaohua quickly said, "I'm just joking with you, eldest senior brother." Little junior brother, your eldest senior brother is right. If you are interested, I should help you find a dual cultivation partner in the mythical Thunder Palace." "It can't be." Xiaohua was stunned and waved his hand even more hurriedly. "Don't, senior sister. You two don't need to worry about this. Could it be that little junior brother already has a sweetheart?" Yin Qinglian said with a smile. "Eldest senior brother, where's master? This little brother has some questions about cultivation." Xiaohua hurriedly turned his head and asked. Hearing Xiaohua mention cultivation, Xiangyang also quickly replied, "Master isn't in the cave today. He should be on duty in the Myriad Thunder Valley. If you have something urgent, I'll send you a summoning talisman." No need. My matter isn't urgent. When will master come back?" "He should be back by tomorrow," Xiangyang said with a smile. "Master has been thinking about you for half a year. He said you used 2 months to cultivate from the 10th layer to the middle of the 11th layer. He hasn't seen you for half a year, so you must have cultivated to the 12th layer. Maybe I'll even cultivate to foundation establishment and give him a surprise." A voice came from the cave. It was Zhuo Minghui who walked out. "Disciple greets mistress." Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly stepped forward and bowed. Get up, good child. Zhuo Minghui waved her hand and helped Xiaohua up. She looked him up and down and said with a smile, although you haven't stepped into foundation establishment, cultivating to the peak of the 11th layer in a year is still commendable. Thank you for your praise, mistress. Xiaohua said embarrassedly. Not being able to cultivate to the 12th layer might have disappointed master. Let's go, Xiaohua. Let's talk inside the cave. Zhuo Minghui said with a smile. Cultivation isn't something that can be done in a day. If the 10th layer can be cultivated to completion in 2 months, the 11th layer might take 2 years. Don't think too much. The 4 of them entered the cave and sat down. As usual, Yin Qinglian took out spiritual tea and spiritual fruits. After Xiaohua ate some, Zhuo Minghui asked, Xiaohua, your medicinal garden in the eastern ridge. However, she only said half of what she wanted to say and didn't say anything else. Hee, disciple understands, Xiaohua said with a smile. He clapped his hands and took out a storage pouch, handing it to Zhuo Minghui. This is disciple's gift to mistress. Mistress, please help me. Okay. Zhuo Minghui liked Xiaohua's cleverness very much. She opened the storage pouch and looked at the spiritual herbs used to concoct soul-gathering pills. She was very satisfied. The age of these things is quite good. They should be able to give you a satisfactory answer. As she said this, she put away the storage pouch. Xiaohua accompanied Zhuo Minghui and chatted for a while. Afterwards, he took his leave and followed Xiangyang back to their cave. After a while, Zhuo Minghui flew out of the cave and headed towards Mythical Thunder Palace. Xiaohua and the other 2 sat down in the Immortal Cave. Xiangyang couldn't wait to ask about Xiaohua's cultivation. Xiaohua's cultivation speed in this year could be considered normal, so he didn't hide anything and answered the general questions truthfully. After Xiangyang finished asking, Xiaohua hesitated for a moment and also asked, Eldest senior martial brother, I have a question about foundation establishment cultivation methods. What? You still looked at the foundation establishment cultivation methods first? Xiangyang frowned. Didn't I already tell you about the foundation establishment cultivation methods? It's not suitable for you to look at now. I'm afraid it will affect your cultivation. Xiaohua smiled and said, Eldest senior martial brother is thinking too much. I only looked at the meridians. I didn't look at any cultivation methods at all. So it's like that. Xiangyang's complexion relaxed a little. He nodded and said, Then what's the problem with the meridians? Xiaohua bit his lips and asked with some hesitation, It's like this. I want to ask, why does the foundation establishment cultivation method start by refining the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the new meridians? Why not continue to refine it in the previous meridians? The previous meridians? Xiangyang asked curiously. You've already used the previous meridians? If you don't open new meridians, how can you increase your cultivation? Little brother's meaning is, why don't you break through the barrier of the meridians and open up new meridians like the previous meridians of the Qi condensation realm, but instead return to the Dantian and open up new meridians? Xiaohua explained. So the Qi refining meridians have already been used? How can you open new meridians? Xiangyang asked back. How do you know there aren't any new meridians? What if there are more? Xiaohua smiled. There are still other meridians? Xiangyang was greatly surprised. He had never thought of this kind of question. Hearing it now was very refreshing. He simply didn't know how to answer Xiaohua. But Yin Qinglian at the side clapped her hands and said, He, youngest junior martial brother, really knows how to think. This question is difficult for your eldest senior martial brother. Xiangyang also wanted to cry and laugh. He shook his head with all his strength. Youngest junior martial brother's thinking is really outrageous. I have no way to answer. Then, eldest senior martial brother, how do you know that the meridians have been refined to the end? That there won't be any new meridians? Xiaohua wanted to get to the bottom of this. Youngest junior martial brother, you haven't cultivated to the peak of the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm. When you enter the foundation establishment realm, you'll know. The peak of the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm is different from the other layers of the Qi refining realm. Yin Qinglian looked at Xiangyang and smiled. Husband, you should tell youngest junior martial brother about your foundation establishment realm. Although it's a bit early to say it now, it's still better than him blindly guessing at the side. right? -7. Chapter 1571. Yes, that's right. Xiangyang thought for a moment, then nodded and said, this is something that can only be said before you build your foundation. But if you think blindly like this, it's very easy to damage your cultivation. Brother will now say a few simple things, so that you won't make a mistake. The specific things to pay attention to will have to wait until later. Moreover, I used 2 chances to build my foundation, so I should still tell you this lesson first. Hee, I'm all ears. Xiaohua cupped his hands, very much enjoying the feeling of having someone give him pointers. Normally, after cultivating to the peak of each stage of qi refinement, it's the process of reaching perfection. After making up for the gaps in the realm, a barrier will appear between the meridians. At this time, it depends on the amount of true qi. If there's enough, then you can break through the barrier and enter the next level. Otherwise, your cultivation may forever stop at this level. Xiangyang explained simply, but what about the peak of the 12th layer of qi refinement? It's different from these. When the cultivation method reaches perfection, the true qi will naturally change, and there will be signs of liquefaction. At this time, you have to take a foundation establishment pill. This foundation establishment pill has 2 effects. One is to provide medicinal power to break through to foundation establishment, and the other is to help condense true qi into a liquid state. Then, if you don't take a foundation establishment pill at this time, and use other medicinal pills, or don't use medicinal pills at all, Xiaohua suddenly asked. This? I don't know. Xiangyang said awkwardly, that day, when I built my foundation, I encountered the signs of liquefaction. I was ecstatic, so I quickly took a foundation establishment pill. It's just that. Xiangyang slightly sighed, looked at Yin Qinglian, who had a comforting smile on her face, and said again, it's just that at that time, I was the only one in the Immortals' Cave in Myriad Thunder Valley. Master and Master's wife were nowhere to be found. Although I made some preparations, I only took 2 foundation establishment pills. My cultivation was still lacking, so 2 foundation establishment pills weren't enough to condense all the true qi in my meridians into a liquid state. I barely managed to refine the 2 foundation establishment pills, and after I failed to break through to foundation establishment, I could only look on helplessly as the liquefied true qi gradually reverted back to true qi. Seeing the loneliness on Xiangyang's face, Xiaohua smiled and said, eldest senior brother, then, have you ever regretted it? Xiaohua had already asked this question before, but now that he asked it again, it must be interesting. Xiangyang looked at Yin Qinglian. The 2 people's eyes were filled with affection. Indeed, in this place, silence speaks louder than words. After waiting for a short moment, Xiaohua coughed and asked again. Eldest senior brother, then what happened after that? After that? After that, I cultivated in seclusion for another 50 years. Just as I was about to lose all hope, the true qi in my meridians suddenly showed signs of liquefying. At that time, I had 10 building foundation dawn in my storage pouch. So, I immediately suppressed the ecstasy in my heart and refined them one by one. Finally, all the true qi in my meridians was transformed into true elemental energy. Xiangyang lightly said, that's strange. Eldest senior brother, you haven't consumed any other medicinal pills in the past 50 years? You didn't take another foundation establishment pill? Xiaohua asked curiously. In his opinion, since his magic power wasn't enough, he should have just taken some medicine. Who cared about medicinal pills? However, Xiangyang shook his head. My Imperial Thunder sect only has medicinal pills for those in the 12th layer of the qi refining realm. We don't have any medicinal pills for those who fail to build their foundation. Moreover, after Master came back, he only urged me to cultivate according to the cultivation method and didn't allow me to take any medicinal pills. As for why, I don't know. Oh, Xiaohua slightly nodded. He also knew that with Xiangyang's honest temperament, he would have absolutely followed the arrangement. He wouldn't have deviated even a little bit. Then, what about the accumulating spirit talisman? Eldest senior brother didn't use it? Xiaohua suddenly thought. Accumulating spirit talisman? Xiangyang smiled bitterly. He looked at Yin Qinglian and said, not only me, but even your senior sister-in-law has never used it. little junior brother, ordinary cultivators. As long as they have the chance to build their foundation, they would do it without any regard for their lives. Who would be willing to stay in the qi refining realm? Yin Qinglian said with a smile. Only those heaven-sent geniuses who are extremely confident in building their foundation and are willing to take this risk to use the accumulating spirit talisman. As I said just now, the great circle of qi refining is the natural perfection of the cultivation method. This is also commonly known as the small circle of qi refining. If you use the accumulating spirit talisman, you can use the power of the talisman to forcefully delay the advancement of your realm and make the small circle of qi refining even more perfect. That's the true great circle of qi refining. Xiang Yang said somewhat enviously. It's said that after cultivators at the great circle of qi refining enter the foundation establishment realm, their magic power is 30% stronger than cultivators of the same realm. The most powerful ones might be 50% stronger. Ah, that much? Xiaohua was slightly astonished. Of course. Otherwise, how could those extremely intelligent people stay in the qi refining realm? Xiang Yang smacked his lips and said, that's not all. Qi refining's divine sense is in the nurturing stage. The longer it's nurturing, the more room it has for growth in the future. Think about it. If your magic power is 50% stronger than people of the same realm, and your divine sense is also 50% stronger than people of the same realm, then how awe-inspiring is that? Tisich, that's not awe-inspiring. Xiao Hua curled his lips in his heart. Although he was currently in the 11th layer of the qi refining realm, killing someone in the 12th layer of the qi refining realm wasn't a problem. This wasn't the same concept as people of the same realm. Hee, little junior brother will enter the foundation establishment realm in a few years. Master and Master's wife are also in Myriad Thunder Valley. If there are no mishaps, little junior brother should have no problem entering the foundation establishment realm. Xiang Yang comforted him. You just need to cultivate peacefully and don't think too much. Yes, disciple understands. Xiaohua bowed and said. Soon after, the three of them talked about something and closed their eyes to cultivate. They waited until noon the next day, but Helpless still hadn't returned. Xiaohua wasn't in a hurry. He listened to Helpless talk about the taboos and experiences of qi refining. Listening to it made him scratch his ears and cheeks. Xiaohua had never thought of these things before, but after trying them out, they were indeed useful. Just as they were talking, a crimson summoning talisman flew into the immortal's cave. It was Zhuo Minghui calling them over. Xiaohua and the others arrived at Helpless Immortal's cave. As soon as they saw each other, Zhuo Minghui smiled and handed over a storage pouch. Xiaohua opened it in surprise. When he saw the soul-gathering pills and a lot of spirit stones inside, he couldn't help but feel extremely grateful. He said with a choked voice, Master's wife, you? Hee, I had nothing to do yesterday, so I went to Mythical Thunder Palace to see my senior sisters whom I haven't seen for a long time. They praised your medicinal herbs very much. After exchanging them for spiritual pills, they also gave you some spirit stones. You should take them. Zhuo Minghui waved her hand as if she really was going to see her senior sisters, and exchanging them for spiritual pills was just a passing matter. Thank you, Master's wife. Xiaohua nodded and put them away. Haha, a divine sense swept past. It was Helpless who had returned from outside. Master! Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian stood up and shouted. Xiaohua naturally also stood up. Helpless ignored Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian. He only looked at Xiaohua and said, How come you're only at the peak of the 11th layer of the qi refining realm? I thought you'd already cultivated to the 12th layer of the qi refining realm. Xiaohua was quite displeased with Helpless snobbery and said embarrassedly, Disciple is actually quite stupid. I was barely able to cultivate to the 11th layer of the qi refining realm. Oh? Why are you suddenly saying that? Helpless said angrily. You're the hope of my Myriad Thunder Valley. If you don't build your foundation, I'll crush you to death. Husband, Yin Qinglian said with a frown, If you say that, how will Xiaohua feel? If he doesn't build his foundation, won't he be your disciple? If you don't want him, I'll take him as my disciple. Hee. Helpless, he rubbed his hands and said, I'm just afraid he'll be like Xiang Yang. Soon after, He clapped his hands helplessly and took out a jade box from his storage bag. He tossed it to Xiao Hua and asked, "Have you seen the secret technique to catalyze your divine sense?" Xiao Hua took the jade box. He was originally at a loss, but when he heard Helpless' question, he immediately understood what was inside the jade box. He smiled and said, "Disciple has just cultivated to the 11th layer of the Qi refining realm, so I haven't had time to see the secret technique yet." Then he raised the jade box and said, "Is this the rainbow cloud?" "Humph, rainbow cloud my ass." Helplessly eating a mouthful of spirit fruit, he spat the core on the ground and cursed, "This year, my Thunder Palace originally had a rainbow epiphyllum that had just matured, but it was snatched by Zhenyu, that old brat, one step ahead of us, saying that it was for his disciple, Zhan Yuqian. Motherfucker, this guy is really shameless. That disciple named Wang Yunxiao was clearly chosen by me first, and I even marked him with my divine sense. This old bastard actually took Wang Yunxiao away and treated him as his disciple. Unfortunately, they've already registered in the Jade Archive Hall, otherwise I." Speaking up to here, he looked helplessly at Xiao Hua and said, "Xiao Hua, Wang Yunxiao is already at the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm. You have to work harder. You have to build your foundation before him. Oh, even if you can't be the first, you can't fall too far behind." Xiao Hua was speechless. He bowed and said, "Disciple understands." Then he said, "If this jade box isn't the rainbow cloud, then what is it?" "Nonsense. If it's not the rainbow cloud, then it's the jade Qilin spirit." "Jade Qilin spirit?" Xiao Hua was puzzled. When he opened the jade box, he saw something similar to a taro inside. It's just that this taro was like jade, and the layers of scales on top were like fish scales. "Master, little junior brother is a rogue cultivator. He doesn't know about this," Xiang Yang reminded. "AI, rogue cultivator," Xiao Hua said helplessly. He waved his hand and said, "You tell him." Little junior brother," Xiang Yang said with a smile, "it's actually very simple. This jade Qilin spirit is the same as the rainbow cloud. They both have the ability to stimulate divine sense. It's just that the rainbow cloud is too rare. It's not easy to find one. In comparison, this jade Qilin spirit is much more abundant. Many cultivation families use this jade Qilin spirit for their disciples to stimulate divine sense. However, the jade Qilin spirit's effect is much worse than the rainbow cloud." "Oh, so it's like that." Xiao Hua put away the jade box and said with a smile, "Thank you, master." "No need to thank me. No need to thank me. If there's nothing else, just go back and cultivate. Come see me when you've built your foundation." Xiao Hua waved his hand helplessly. "Disciple has a few questions. After I ask master, I'll immediately return." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "Quickly ask, quickly ask." "Hee master, little junior brother is very talented." Xiang Yang was afraid that Xiao Hua would get angry, so he quickly said, "Disciple doesn't know how to answer the questions he asked." Is that so? Why don't you tell me?" Xiao Hua looked at Xiao Hua with surprise. Xiang Yang gave Xiao Hua a look, telling him not to say anything. He then repeated Xiao Hua's question. Sure enough, Xiao Hua immediately jumped up and said, "Damn it, I showed you the foundation establishment cultivation method, so you could go to the technique imparting pavilion and find an even higher level cultivation method than this one. You're actually looking for fun here. Don't you want to build your foundation?" "It can't be?" Xiao Hua muttered. Beside him, Zhuo Minghui stopped him again and said, "Husband, this child is very curious. It's good that he can think more. You should talk to him. Don't let him go down the wrong path." "AI, a disciple is as boring as a rock. I just took in one, and he's like, the mountain ape at the door. How can I be so unlucky?" Xiao Hua sighed helplessly. He thought for a moment and said, "Actually, it's nothing. Think about it. Before the 12th layer of Qi refining, can every cultivator break through to the next realm by taking medicinal pills? Of course not." Xiao Hua seemed to have thought of something. "Then, why can't they advance even if they take medicinal pills?" Xiao Hua asked helplessly. Xiao Hua smiled and said, "It must be the meridians, right?" You're quite smart." Xiao Hua glared at him helplessly. "Meridians are the foundation of cultivation. All true qi and true essence are formed by refining the spiritual energy of heaven and earth through the meridians. Everyone's cultivation process is also the process of refining the meridians themselves. If the meridian's ability to refine has already reached its limit, do you think, even if there are more medicinal pills and more spiritual energy, it can still be refined? N. Disciple understands. It must be that after reaching the peak of the 12th layer of qi refining, the meridian's ability to refine true qi has also reached its peak. It can no longer produce more true qi. If one can't build their foundation in time, then their magic power can no longer increase? Xiao Hua continued. Exactly. Of course, this is the case for your eldest senior brother. What's the use of taking medicinal pills? He just needs to carefully comprehend his realm. If fate allows it, won't he be able to enter the foundation establishment realm? Xiao Hua looked helplessly at Xiangyang and said, unfortunately, the difference between the second and the first time is too great. His achievements will always be limited. But master, doesn't the accumulating spirit talisman also force one's realm? Xiao Hua asked. You don't know shit. The accumulating spirit talisman doesn't force one's realm. It forces one's true qi to transform into true essence. That was the first time he built his foundation. He only used the accumulating spirit talisman's magic power to prolong the process as much as possible. During this prolonged process, because true essence is together with true qi for a long time, it will undergo a certain mutation. On the other hand, it can refine the meridians that were refined during the qi refining stage again with true essence, increasing the strength of the meridians. After entering the foundation establishment realm, one can have a few % more true essence than others. So that's how it is. Xiao Hua finally understood. So there were so many reasons behind this. However, the accumulating spirit talisman is admittedly a good thing. Xiao Hua helplessly said, but using the accumulating spirit talisman still has a great risk. -7. Chapter 1572. When using the accumulating spirit talisman, if there's even the slightest bit of carelessness, the liquefied true essence will begin to transform back into true qi. That's not good. All of your previous efforts will be wasted. At best, you'll be beaten back to your original state and have to wait for the second foundation building. At worst, your meridians won't be able to hold too much true qi. Your meridians may break and your Tao will perish. Helplessly speaking, he looked at Xiao Hua and said, now that you know, do you still want to use the accumulating spirit talisman? Why not? If others can use it, I can also use it. Xiao Hua said without hesitation. Being competitive is the most undesirable thing in cultivation. Helplessly shaking his head. Fine, I'm just being competitive. Xiao Hua secretly said, you want me to build my foundation earlier, but you don't want me to be competitive. Helplessly thinking, he said, it's still early. Wait until you reach the 12th layer of qi refining. If your true qi is vigorous, then use it. If it's not, then you should just build your foundation. I'll listen to master's instructions. Xiao Hua bowed and said. Soon after, Xiao Hua asked a few more questions, especially those about divine sense and the Naiwan Palace, helplessly answering them all one by one. Don't look at Helplessly's impatient temper and somewhat irritable. In the aspect of cultivation, Helplessly was really amazing. When he talked about some cultivation experiences, Helplessly was very familiar with them. He explained the profound and simple terms and drew inferences about other things from one example and so on. Helplessly, he got so excited that he stopped cultivating. He only talked about the stars in the night sky and welcomed the rising sun. Only then did he stop talking endlessly. Under Xiao Hua's worshipful gaze, he helplessly waved his hand and had Xiao Hua leave. Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian also followed him out. Before leaving, Xiangyang couldn't help but repeatedly exhort, Junior Marshal Brother, this foundation establishment is really extremely difficult. You must not let your emotions affect your decisions. If there's anything I can help you with, you must tell me. Xiao Hua knew this was Xiangyang's concern. After thinking for a while, he said with a smile, how about this? If senior brother is willing, how about you protect me while I build my foundation? Great. A smile appeared on Xiangyang's face. This was exactly what he wanted. However, when a cultivator in the 12th layer of the aura refining realm entered the foundation building realm, it was also the time when they were at their weakest. It was impossible for an ordinary person to be by their side. Although Xiang Yang was Xiao Hua's eldest senior martial brother, according to reason, he should be by Xiao Hua's side as a protector, but Xiao Hua, after all, didn't receive Xiang Yang's guidance since childhood. If he took the initiative to say it, it might not necessarily be somewhat reckless, and it also wouldn't be in line with Xiang Yang's timid nature. Now that Xiao Hua mentioned it without the slightest hesitation, it naturally meant that he didn't regard Xiang Yang as an outsider. How could Xiang Yang not be happy? However, Junior Brother still has a few years to go before he reaches the peak of the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm. Right now, we should break through the bottleneck of the 11th layer of the Qi refining realm and see if we can generate divine sense. Otherwise, we can only use the Jade Kirin fruit to accelerate the process. Xiang Yang said with a smile. Yes, I will listen to eldest senior brother's orders. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, I'll return to the eastern ridge to cultivate first. If there's anything, I'll inform eldest senior brother. Soon after, Xiao Hua leaped into the air and flew towards the eastern mountain range. However, in the time it took to smoke a cigarette, Xiao Hua changed his mind. After a slight hesitation, he flew towards the shocking Thunder Palace. Along the way, Xiao Hua saw that there was no one around. He used the lightning escape technique and arrived in front of the Yinlei Palace in just a few hours. At this time, the Yinlei Palace was different from the last time. Although it was floating in the clouds, there was a long ladder that snaked downwards from the entrance of the Yinlei Palace. Inside the clouds, the Yinlei Palace actually emitted a faint lightning glow, causing the surroundings to flicker. Is today the time to impart the technique? Xiao Hua thought as his figure landed on the ladder. The ladder was also mysterious. Just as Xiao Hua's figure landed and was about to lift his leg to walk up, the ladder actually moved up by itself. Xiao Hua didn't need to move at all. His figure slowly walked towards the entrance of the Yinlei Palace. This is really interesting, Xiao Hua thought to himself. When he arrived at the entrance of the Yinlei Palace, it was a tall palace that looked no different from the Shualei Palace. Just as Xiao Hua was about to enter, an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator came out of the palace. He looked at Xiao Hua up and down, then used his divine sense to scan him. He frowned and scolded. Where is your waste token? Why did you only come now? The technique imparting disciple has already been preaching for several hours. I'm afraid it's nearing the end. How can you step into the foundation establishment realm with this kind of slack? Xiao Hua smiled apologetically, took out his token and said, Senior, please know that disciple's errand job is in the eastern mountain range. It's very far from here. Yesterday, I couldn't stay in the shocking Thunder Palace, so I came late today. When the cultivator heard that Xiao Hua was in the eastern mountain range, his face slightly changed. He took the token, scanned it with his divine sense, and handed it back. Quickly go in. The East Side Palace is preaching about the art of medicine. It's useful for you. You can go and listen. The West Side Palace is preaching about the foundation of techniques. It's also useful for new disciples like you. Yes, disciple understands. Thank you for the reminder, Senior. Xiao Hua bowed and entered the Yinlei Palace. Xiao Hua curiously looked at the main hall. The main hall of the evolved Thunder Palace seemed to be different from the Bright Thunder Palace and the Spring Thunder Palace. The main hall wasn't big, it was square-shaped, and in the middle, there was a square pillar standing from top to bottom. The four sides of the main hall, as well as the roof above and the ground below, were all covered with many runes. These runes were engraved with intelligence and seemed to have a profound meaning. On the square pillar, there were countless tiny lightning threads flashing. These countless lightning threads formed different runes that moved around the entire pillar in a very orderly manner. This pillar looks a lot like a jade slip. Thinking about this, Xiao Hua released his perception and used his divine sense to read the jade slip to step into the pillar. Boom! When Xiao Hua's perception entered the pillar, a rumbling sound came from the jade slip. Xiao Hua didn't feel like he was looking at the jade slip. Instead, he felt the same as when he entered the illusion array. After a rumbling sound, a towering mountain range appeared in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. This mountain range was completely crimson. This is... Before Xiao Hua could think of anything else, a tall and thin cultivator with white hair and beard, wearing a red Taoist robe, descended from the sky and landed on the crimson mountain range. Xiao Hua couldn't see through that cultivator's cultivation. Who is this? Following Xiao Hua's puzzlement, that cultivator patted his hand and took out a bead that was similar to the thunder-devouring bead from his storage pouch. Thunder-devouring bead? Xiao Hua was shocked. However, when he looked carefully, this thunder-devouring bead was even smaller than the one he had. Moreover, there were no lightning sparks around the bead. However, Xiao Hua could clearly see that there were countless lightning sparks lingering inside the small bead. Immediately after, the cultivator threw the thunder-devouring bead into the air and then grabbed it with his hand. As the cultivator slowly raised his hand, a large ball of lightning appeared from the thunder-devouring bead. As the cultivator raised his hand, the large ball of lightning flew into the air. Immediately after, the cultivator kept making hand seals. Every hand seal seemed to be played down, but wherever the hand seals were cast, a hurricane would appear in the air. Moreover, as the hand seals were cast, the lightning sparks emitted a dazzling brilliance. After a while, the cultivator opened his mouth and spat out a light purple brilliance into the lightning sparks. Suddenly, the lightning sparks emitted an extremely bright brilliance and gradually expanded. When it was about 100 feet wide, the cultivator pointed his finger and the lightning sparks slowly fell and sank into the crimson mountain range. The cultivator's figure also disappeared along with the lightning sparks. Ancestor Qianyun? Xiao Hua instantly understood that this cultivator was the founder of the Imperial Thunder Sect, Qianyun. Sure enough, a moment later, a purple light shone from under the mountain range and spread in all directions like a ring. Ancestor Qianyun's figure suddenly appeared from the mountain range and kept making hand seals. The brilliance flashed continuously in the mountain range. As the brilliance went away, heavy dark clouds pressed down from the sky and countless thin lightning sparks fell below the brilliance. Ancestor Qianyun's figure was like a god. Damn it, Ancestor is really awe-inspiring, Xiao Hua secretly said. Immediately after, Xiao Hua's eyes darkened again. When he could see clearly again, there were countless disciples on the mountain range and countless tall and majestic palaces. It was the current appearance of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Just when Xiao Hua didn't know how to retreat, the image of Ancestor Qianyun appeared in front of him again. Greetings, Ancestor. Xiao Hua didn't dare to neglect and hurriedly bowed. Ancestor Qianyun ignored him and just flicked his sleeve. Xiao Hua's figure suddenly rose up and fell into the palace in the clouds in mid-air. Isn't this the Yinlei Palace? Xiao Hua was stunned, but when he was in a daze, he saw a tall and thin cultivator standing in front of the pillar of the Yinlei Palace. He looked very lost. Damn! Seeing the tall and thin figure, Xiao Hua's heart moved. This seems to be, before he could even think about it, his figure merged with the tall and skinny figure. Then, Xiao Hua's eyes shook slightly. When he opened his eyes, he had already retracted his perception. In front of him was still that pillar of lightning with restrained light. Xiao Hua shook his head. He really couldn't distinguish whether he was in an illusion or in reality. He wanted to bite his finger to distinguish, but he felt that it was a bit embarrassing. At this moment, the door to the east side hall opened, and an early Foundation establishment cultivator walked out. He looked up at Xiao Hua, who was standing in front of a pillar. His gaze swept over him, and without stopping, he walked into the inner hall. Behind that cultivator, dozens of aura-refining disciples rushed out. These disciples were of different ages and cultivation levels, ranging from the 4th layer to the 12th layer of aura refining. Xiao Hua. A very familiar voice sounded. -7. Chapter 1573. Hearing someone call out his name in surprise, Xiao Hua smiled and looked at the group of disciples coming out of the side chamber. Among the many male disciples, there were 20 or so female disciples. They all had flower-like faces and were wearing colorful clothes. Not only did they attract Xiao Hua's gaze, The gazes of the 100 or so young male disciples also fell on them from time to time. In front of the 20 or so female disciples, there were two female cultivators who were about the same height. One had a round face, round and smooth like a pearl, and the other had an oval face, looking elegant. The one who called out to Xiaohua was the round and smooth Xue Xue. Hearing Xue Xue call out Xiaohua's name, the gazes of the 100 or so disciples all fell on Xiaohua. The eyes of the cold and elegant female cultivator beside Xue Xue also flashed with a trace of astonishment. Seeing everyone's gazes fall on him, Xiaohua felt slightly uncomfortable. He couldn't help but raise his hand to touch his nose and said with a bitter smile, "Xue Xue, long time no see, how are you?" Seeing Xiaohua's somewhat lazy movements, Xue Xue couldn't help but feel her heartbeat faster. Her face was actually a bit hot, and her voice was much softer than before. She replied, I'm very good. How about you?" Seeing Xue Xue like this, the hearts of the surrounding male disciples became bleak. In an instant, their gazes were like flying swords, piercing Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua looked around and sneered in his heart. He took a few steps forward and said with a smile, "Look at I's spirited appearance, how could I not be good?" Not only did Xue Xue's face smile, but the surrounding dozen or so female disciples also covered their mouths and giggled. Junior sister Xue, is this the Xiaohua you often mention?" The cold and elegant female cultivator beside her also had a rare smile on her face. She moved closer to Xue Xue's ear and whispered, It's him." Xue Xue's voice was like a mosquito. "This Xiaohua is really amazing. Previously you said he was only in the middle of the 10th level of qi refining. Look, it's only been a little over a year, and he's actually at the peak of the 11th level of qi refining." The female cultivator's voice was indifferent, but traces of competitiveness could be heard. Is that so?" As soon as Xue Xue saw Xiaohua, her heart was filled with joy. How could she pay attention to his cultivation level? When she heard what her senior sister said, she promptly raised her head. Wasn't Xiaohua at the peak of the 11th layer of qi refining? "Junior brother Xiao." Right at this moment, another voice sounded from behind the crowd. When Xiaohua looked up, he saw Wang Yunxiao, Mingu, Yuan Bo, and the others. Xiaohua looks at the dozen or so 10th and 11th layer qi refining disciples clustered behind these three people. He says with a smile, "Hello, three senior martial brothers. Long time no see. Both of you are in the 12th layer of qi refining. I'm truly envious." Wang Yunxiao took a few steps forward, cupped his fists and said, "Same here. We've all advanced from the middle of the 11th layer to the middle of the 12th layer, and junior martial brother Xiao has also advanced from the middle of the 10th layer to the peak of the 11th layer. Junior martial brother Xiao, you've made great progress." Xiaohua cupped his fists in return and said, That's incomparable. I still don't know when I'll be able to step into the 12th layer." Mingu and Yuan Bo glanced at Xiaohua, then shifted their gazes to Xue Xue and the other female cultivator. Seeing the two whispering to each other and occasionally glancing at Xiaohua, their eyes were filled with displeasure. They glanced at each other again, then smiled and said, "Congratulations, junior martial brother Xiao. You've finally broken free from the hardships of being a loose cultivator." Congratulations to you too." Xiaohua didn't understand why they would mention loose cultivators like this, so he only replied with a smile. Everyone came out of the side hall. Some people walked past Xiaohua, but there were also quite a few people who stopped and looked at Xiaohua and the others with interest. But when they heard that Xiaohua was a loose cultivator, their eyes immediately revealed a kind of disdain. They raised their pauses again, and each of them dispersed. Apart from a few younger disciples behind Xue Xue, the rest of the female disciples also left one after another. The cold and elegant female cultivator rolled her eyes a few times, then smiled and said, "Xue Xue, since you've met an old friend, you might as well wait here for a moment. I will return to Sunlei Palace first." "Don't." Xue Xue was a bit anxious. She grabbed the female cultivator's sleeve and said, "Senior martial sister Xue, don't be anxious. This disciple will leave after saying a few words to him." When Wang Yunxiao saw this, his gaze slightly swept over Min Gu and Yuan Bo. He cupped his fists and said to Xiaohua, "Junior martial brother Xiao, You and I live very close to each other. Although we haven't seen each other for a long time, if you return to fledgling Thunder Peak, you'd better send me a sound transmission talisman. Your old friend is still here, so I won't take up any more of your time." With that said, he nodded and walked away. Minggu and Yuan Bo didn't seem to want to leave. However, when they saw that Wang Yunxiao had left, followed by a few male disciples, they also cupped their fists towards Xiao Hua with extreme helplessness. Then, they nodded towards Shui and the others and left Sunlei Palace. Before leaving, they viciously looked back. But at this time, Xiao Hua didn't see it, because Shui pulled the cold and elegant female disciple in front of Xiao Hua and said with a smile, "Xiao Hua, this is my senior martial sister. Her name is Sun Shu. Greetings, senior martial sister Shui." Xiao Hua had a smile on his face. He bowed and said, "This disciple has seen Senior Sun Ming's elegant demeanor at Spring Thunder Palace. I really envy you all. Hee, how about Senior Martial Brother Xiao also enter our Sunlei Palace?" A few female disciples behind Shui, who looked exceptionally intelligent, said with a smile, "Go, go. You all wait outside the palace." Shui waved her hand, looking like a senior martial sister. Hee, yes, we will obey Senior Martial Sister Shui's orders. Those female disciples smiled like flowers and ran out of Sunlei Palace. "Xiao Hua, I heard you went to the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden?" Shui blinked her large eyes and looked at Xiao Hua with great concern. "That place is so far away from Sunlei Palace and also not close to Jinlei Palace. Why did you choose that place? The Eastern Ridge Herb Garden?" Sun Shu was also stunned. Her beautiful eyes looked at Xiao Hua and said very strangely, "Wasn't that herb garden abandoned long ago? Even if you want to look after the spirit herbs, you don't have to go to the Eastern Ridge." Xiao Hua scratched his head and said, "I don't know how to craft talismans, nor do I know how to refine pills. I also don't want to do other chores, so I naturally chose the easy job of looking after them. Moreover, I was born as a loose cultivator. If others look down on me, I might as well stay far away from them and save myself the trouble." Junior Martial Brother Xiao says it so easily. "I'm afraid you have ulterior motives, right?" Sun Shu said with a smile. "Won't you know once you see fellow Taoist Zhao's cultivation increase?" "Oh? Haha," Xiao Hua laughed and didn't explain. He looked at the side hall behind Shui and said curiously, "This is Maijinlei Palace's Yanlei Palace. Why did Sunlei Palace's disciples come to listen to a technique imparting disciples lecture?" Hee. Shui covered her mouth and laughed. "Senior Martial Brother Xiao, have you never heard of a technique imparting disciples lecture? On the first day of every month, disciples of each Thunder Palace can go to other Thunder Palaces to listen to lectures. Senior Martial Sister Sun had a sudden impulse, so we came to Jinlei Palace. I didn't expect. What and what?" Shui. Sun Shu retorted from the side. "Wasn't it your idea to come to Jinlei Palace? What does it have to do with I? And you bumped into that Yuan Bo as soon as you arrived and even asked him about something in a low voice. So you were asking about this." Sun Shu continued. "Senior Martial Sister," Shui said coquettishly with a burning face. At this time, at the entrance of Yanlei Palace, several Sunlei Palace's disciples who just went out poked their heads out and shouted, "Senior Martial Sister Shui, the palace sent a message telling us to go back earlier." Shui heard and her face turned cold. She said to Xiao Hua, "The palace is urging me, so I won't say much to you. If you have nothing to do, send me a message too. Last time, you actually didn't tell me you were in Dongling. Haha, I was afraid of delaying your cultivation." Xiao Hua touched his nose and laughed. "Just remember it in the future." "Okay." Shui laughed and pulled Sun Shu's hand to leave quickly. She still turned her head halfway. "Don't forget." I know. Go quickly." Xiao Hua grinned and waved his hand a few times. After leaving Yanlei Palace, Shui and the others flew into the air. Sun Shu suddenly asked in a low voice, Shui, "This Xiao Hua seems to be very mysterious." "Mysterious?" Shui was slightly stunned and said very strangely, "I've known him for so long, but I didn't feel it." "Haha, you're in this mountain, so deep in the clouds you don't know." Sun Shu laughed. "Look at him. He doesn't even know that the disciples of the Thunder Palace are taught by each other. It's like this is the first time he came to Yinlei Palace, and he's never listened to the teachings of the senior brothers before. Think about it, he's a loose cultivator. But now he actually used more than a year to cultivate from the middle of the 10th level to the peak of the 11th level. Although he can't be considered outstanding in my Thunder Palace, it's still impressive. If he's not mysterious, who is? Xue Xue shook her head. Maybe his master taught him more? Who's Xiao Hua's master? Sun Shu shook his head. You also know that before we build foundation, our masters rarely give us pointers, and he's a loose cultivator, so his master's pointers are even less. Xiao Hua's master's name is helplessness. Xue Xue said. Even if it's not his master's pointers, maybe it's his senior brother's. Helplessness? Sun Shu was stunned. Then the corners of his mouth rose. He said with a smile, Then I know who Xiao Hua's senior brother is. Who? Xue Xue asked curiously. Is his senior brother very famous? Then the two people's topic of conversation changed from Xiao Hua to Xiangyang's story, back to Xiao Hua. After watching Xue Xue and the others leave, he took a step forward and walked towards a closed door on his left. When he arrived in front of the door, Xiao Hua tilted his head to listen. It was very quiet inside, without any sound. So Xiao Hua stretched out his hand and gently pushed. The door quietly opened. Suddenly, a clear voice entered Xiao Hua's ears. Through the half-closed door, Xiao Hua saw a rather large side hall with several hundred disciples. These disciples were all sitting in a circle on the ground. In front of the center, a foundation-building cultivator was sitting cross-legged on a praying mat. He was stretching out a hand and slowly forming hand seals. Listening to the cultivator's voice, it seemed like he was chanting some kind of spell. Xiao Hua thought for a moment, then quietly walked in. He closed the door behind him and walked behind the outermost disciple. He also sat cross-legged and listened to the cultivator's lecture in front of him. After listening for a while, Xiao Hua could tell that the cultivator was talking about the minor confinement art. It was a spell that 10th and 11th layer Qi refining cultivators could use. After talking for a while, the cultivator stopped and called a disciple to demonstrate. Unfortunately, that disciple didn't seem to be proficient. He waved his hand several times, but still couldn't cast the minor confinement art. Seeing bean-sized beads of sweat dripping from his forehead, the foundation-building senior brother sneered and said, Sit down. In the future, when you listen to lectures, you have to pay attention. When that disciple sat down with a flushed face, the foundation-building cultivator unexpectedly looked at Xiao Hua. Oh no! Xiao Hua was slightly startled. Sure enough, the foundation-building senior brother pointed at him and said, What's your name? Stand up. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly in his heart. He stood up and bowed, saying, Disciple Xiao Hua greets senior. Are you a disciple of my Thunderclap Palace? Yes. Then that's strange. How come I have never seen you before? Moreover, today, you actually came in right after I was about to finish my lecture. You don't know I's temper? That disciple is on duty at the Eastern Ridge's medicinal garden. It's really too far from my Thunderclap Palace, so disciple asked for the steward's order to cultivate on my own in the Eastern Ridge. Xiao Hua said very apologetically, This is disciple's first time listening to a lecture. I really don't understand senior's rules. That cultivator obviously knew how far the Eastern Ridge was. He waved his hand and said, Since you came, then you have to understand. Did you understand what I said just now? Disciple understands. Good, you can cast it and see. Hearing this, Xiao Hua waved his hand and deliberately made the wrong hand seal. That minor confinement art naturally couldn't be used. That cultivator shook his head slightly and gave a few pointers. Xiao Hua listened. It was precisely the part he made the wrong hand seal. After correcting it, he cast the minor confinement art. And not much. Your comprehension is quite high. That foundation establishment cultivator nodded and said, Admittedly, you're on duty at the Eastern Ridge, but you also have to prioritize cultivation. If you have free time, it's better to come back and listen to lectures more often. Yes, disciple understands. Xiao Hua said respectfully, All right, that's all for today. 10 days later, I will lecture on palm lightning again. Finished speaking, That cultivator stood up. All the disciples opened up a path and bowed, saying, "Respectfully see Senior off." "Forget it." That cultivator flicked his sleeves and walked out of the side chamber with quick steps. Xiaohua was right behind everyone, so he was naturally the first to come out of the side chamber. Seeing that cultivator walking towards the inner hall, he immediately ran 2 steps forward and said in a low voice, "Senior, disciple has something to ask." That cultivator turned his head to look at Xiaohua and said with a smile, "If there's anything you don't understand about the technique I taught today, I can naturally answer. Previous ones? Forgive I for not answering. I dare not." Disciple just wants to ask Senior where our Thunderclap Palace's technique imparting pavilion is. Xiaohua said respectfully, "Technique imparting pavilion? What are you going there for?" That cultivator looked at Xiaohua and said curiously, "You haven't reached the peak of the 12th layer of the aura refining realm, so it's still not the time to look for a technique, right?" Hee. Disciple just wants to look up some ancient books. "Senior, please show me the way," Xiaohua said with a smile. "In follow I." That cultivator turned around and said, -7. Chapter 1574. Xiaohua followed the foundation-building cultivator into the inner hall. After walking for the time it took to smoke a cigarette, several divine senses swept past Xiaohua's body, but they didn't stop. After turning into a corridor, there was a small projector wall. On the projector wall, there was a huge picture. On the picture was an antique pavilion. The door of the pavilion was half closed, and there was a plaque on the door with the words, "Technique Imparting Pavilion," written on it. Seeing the cultivator stop in front of the picture, Xiaohua was a bit dazed. He secretly said, "Could it be this is the Technique Transmission Pavilion?" Sure enough, he heard the cultivator point his hand and say, "Take out your identity tablet and throw it into the picture." "Yes, disciple understands," Xiaohua answered and took out the tablet. After hesitating for a moment, he threw the tablet into the picture. As soon as the tablet touched the picture on the screen wall, the picture emitted a trace of lightning that struck the tablet. Strangely enough, a trace of lightning also flashed from the tablet and collided with the lightning that struck it. The 2 streaks of lightning disappeared at the same time, and the tablet sank into the picture. After a moment, the whole picture emitted a tricolored brilliance. The brilliance flashed, and the picture disappeared. What appeared in front of Xiaohua was a courtyard door that was the same size as the picture. Through the courtyard door, not far ahead, there was a pavilion that was exactly the same as the one in the picture, just now standing in the center of the courtyard. Just as Xiaohua was staring, a middle-stage foundation building cultivator came out from the courtyard door, holding Xiaohua's tablet in his hand. He looked at Xiaohua and asked, "You're Xiaohua? Disciple is." Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. "Why did you come to the Technique Transmission Pavilion?" Xiaohua didn't answer. He turned around and said to the foundation-building cultivator who brought him here, "Thank you for leading the way, Senior." Hee. You're welcome." The cultivator laughed, flicked his big sleeve, and turned around to leave. When the cultivator walked far away, Xiaohua clapped his hand and took out the sect master's tablet, handing it over. "Disciple has something to do in the Technique Transmission Pavilion. Senior, please check the tablet." "Oh." The foundation-building cultivator stared blankly at first, but when he saw the sect master command tablet, he was slightly startled. After repeatedly examining it, he handed it back to Xiaohua along with the identity tablet. He said, "According to the sect master command tablet, you can look it up in the Technique Inheritance Pavilion, but you can't take it out?" "Yes, disciple understands." Xiaohua received the sect master token and replied, "Come in." That cultivator turned around and entered the courtyard. Xiaohua followed him in. When Xiaohua's figure turned around the courtyard door, a tricolored brilliance flashed, and that picture appeared again. The entire screen wall returned to its previous appearance. The real Inheritance Technique Pavilion was different from the picture. It was surrounded by Foundation Establishment disciples. The Foundation Establishment cultivator didn't lead Xiaohua to the Inheritance Technique Pavilion. Instead, he led him to a small house next to the Inheritance Technique Pavilion. Reporting to Martial Uncle, there's an aura refining disciple with the sect master's order who wants to come to the Technique Imparting Pavilion to look at the ancient records. The Foundation establishment cultivator walked to the entrance of the room and reported respectfully. A very valiant divine sense was emitted from the small house. It circled around Xiaohua's body a few times, and a lazy voice sounded. Has the sect master's order been examined? Reporting to Martial Uncle, it has been examined. It was indeed issued by the sect master. Then let him in. It's just that this disciple's sect master's order is somewhat special. It seems the sect master has decreed that he can enter the technique inheritance pavilions of the 8 great lightning palaces. That cultivator said cautiously, "Oh, this disciple is called Xiaohua, right?" "Yes, Martial Uncle understands. He's indeed Xiaohua." "And let him in." The sect master has long passed down a decree. Cultivation methods and magic arts that are a level higher than his can all be looked at. It's just that he can't take it out of the technique inheritance pavilion. A trace of extraordinary splendor flashed through that cultivator's eyes. He cupped his hands and said, "Yes, disciple understands." Soon after, he said in a low voice, "Come with this old man." Xiaohua nodded, then rushed into the small house and bowed. "Thank you, senior." It was quiet inside the small house, as if no one had heard anything. Seeing that there was no movement, Xiaohua also turned around and followed that cultivator into the pavilion. They walked all the way to the door. Then the cultivator pointed with his hand and said, "Take your identity tablet and go in yourself." Then, he turned around and walked to a place not far from the pavilion. There was a praying mat placed on the ground there. He sat down cross-legged and no longer paid attention to Xiaohua. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He respectfully bowed and thanked the cultivator's back. Only then did he take out his identity tablet and step into the pavilion. The pavilion's door wasn't high. It was carved out of bronze-colored wood. It didn't look too different from the study of a mortal family. Xiaohua raised his eyes and looked. He very easily passed through that door. There was actually no restriction at all. Strange. Xiaohua was greatly surprised. The restriction outside is so peculiar. Inside, not waiting for him to give birth to this thought, suddenly, from inside the pavilion, a large clump of lightning net flashing with lightning whistled and rushed towards Xiaohua. Xiaohua didn't even see the situation inside the pavilion clearly before he was wrapped in the lightning net. Motherfucker, Xiaohua's back instantly broke out in cold sweat. Fortunately, he also firmly believed that this lightning net would not harm him in any way. Although his transcendence energy was attracted by the lightning net and seemed to want to leave his body, he still forcibly suppressed it. Sure enough, just when he wasn't affected by the lightning net, the identity tablet in his hand emitted extremely faint lightning. It was different from when he entered the painting just now. Although the lightning was extremely small and faint, once it came into contact with the lightning net was like an illusion. It only flashed for a moment and then disappeared. After the lightning net disappeared, Xiaohua finally saw everything inside the pavilion clearly. However, Xiaohua's expression suddenly became dumbfounded. This pavilion wasn't large. It was only several tens of feet long. On the pavilion's surrounding walls, there were paintings that were more than half the height of a person hanging. The center of the pavilion wasn't like what Xiaohua imagined. There were bookshelves, and there were also no jade slips placed on top of the bookshelves. There were only fist-sized balls of light. Counting them carefully, there were as many as 9 balls of light. Each ball of light was rotating in a fixed place, and the 9 balls of light seemed to form a very mysterious magic formation. This, Xiaohua somewhat scratched his head. The cultivation method, where is it? Even though Xiaohua walked through the entire pavilion and looked at the seemingly existing second floor, there was no ladder that could lead to it. Just when Xiaohua turned around and wanted to go out and ask, one of the paintings on the wall beside Xiaohua suddenly emitted a faint lightning. That lightning swayed and cast on the floor of the pavilion. From that painting, a cultivator whose cultivation couldn't be seen walked out. Xiaohua was startled. He quickly retreated a few steps and respectfully looked at the cultivator. He saw that the cultivator's figure was originally nothingness, but then it gradually solidified. When the light and shadow turned into a real person, the lightning that was projected on the ground immediately returned to the painting. And That cultivator slightly tilted his head and glanced at Xiaohua. He walked to the side of a ball of light and used his hand to point. That ball of light suddenly enlarged. The cultivator patted his hand and took out a jade slip. Then, he threw it into the ball of light. Then, with another point, that ball of light shrank and returned to its original position. Martial Ancestor, Xiaohua saw that the cultivator was about to leave and quickly called out, "Disciple Xiaohua wants to ask for guidance from Martial Ancestor." "Oh, what do you want?" The cultivator turned his head and asked very indifferently, "This is the first time Disciple has come here to look up the ancient records. I don't know how to look it up. Martial Ancestor, please instruct me." Xiaohua respectfully asked, "And Xinjiang and the others didn't explain to you how to use it?" The cultivator frowned and said very unhappily, "This Disciple didn't ask." Xiaohua saw that the cultivator was unhappy and quickly smiled apologetically. "I'm afraid Martial Uncle and the others thought Disciple knew." "Heh, you're thinking for others." That cultivator snorted from his nose and pointed with his hand. "Within these few halos is the place where my technique imparting pavilion stores ancient records. You only need to throw your identity tablet into it, and the halos will naturally lead you in." After saying that, the cultivator didn't stay and left the technique imparting pavilion. "Oh, so it's like that." Xiaohua cupped his hands and sent that cultivator off. Looking at the 9 balls of light around him, he didn't know which one was which. Originally, he wanted to go out and ask, but on second thought, there were only 9. Wouldn't it be fine to try them one by one? Thinking this, Xiaohua took out his identity tablet and tried to throw it into the ball of light next to him. Unexpectedly, after the identity tablet was thrown in, that ball of light spun rapidly and slowly emitted a layer of orange-red brilliance. The brilliance didn't last long, and Xiaohua's identity tablet was thrown out again. "Hee, I'm afraid I won't be able to do good." Xiaohua understood that his identity tablet should be like what that senior he'd never met said. It could only enter the halos of foundation building and aura refining cultivation techniques. Sure enough, after Xiaohua walked towards the door and tried to throw his identity tablet in, that ball of light spun and emitted an emerald green brilliance. Soon after, from that ball of light, a flight of stairs floated in the air and extended to Xiaohua's feet. "Wonderful!" Xiaohua almost clapped his hands. Soon after, he stepped onto the stairs. Sure enough, the stairs automatically shrank and Xiaohua's figure shrunk even more. As the stairs unexpectedly flew into the ball of light and disappeared, the entire pavilion immediately returned to its previous tranquility. Not long after, the ball of light that Xiaohua entered suddenly started to spin again. Soon after, it expanded and another flight of stairs extended from the ball of light. A middle-stage foundation building cultivator walked down the stairs with a jade slip in his hand. As the stairs moved, a small, inch-long person gradually grew bigger. By the time it landed on the ground, it already had the appearance of an ordinary person. Immediately after, that flight of stairs didn't shrink and Xiaohua walked out from the ball of light. He walked to the cultivator's side and bowed with a smile. "Martial Uncle, thank you for your guidance." And that cultivator didn't say much and clapped his hands. He took out an identity tablet and threw it towards the wall. It was a blank picture scroll. Just like before, the picture scroll projected a brilliance of lightning. That cultivator took a step forward, and the brilliance suddenly disappeared. The cultivator flew into the picture scroll and disappeared. Looking at the picture scroll again, it actually gradually revealed a splash ink painting. The mountain in the painting looked very majestic. -7. Chapter 1575. "Oh, so that's how it is." Xiaohua nodded. He looked around and saw that only 30% of the paintings on the wall had different pictures. Presumably, they were all occupied by people. And this painting has its own space. Inside it is a quiet room. Those who take the cultivation methods of the technique imparting pavilion are not allowed to take them out of the pavilion, so they have to comprehend them in this quiet room. Xiaohua suddenly understood. He then looked at the ball of light that just came out, and a trace of a bitter smile appeared on his face. Although the ball of light looks small from the outside, the space inside is extremely large. there are many jade slips. The jade slips are divided into talisman crafting, alchemy, cultivation methods, incantations, and so on. They are all placed in different areas. At the same time, there are several Foundation establishment disciples in the space also looking through ancient books. Xiao Hua is currently at the 11th layer of qi refining, so he doesn't dare to reveal too much of his perception. Seeing that the inside is full of jade slips, he just casually looked through them and didn't use his perception to probe. However, looking at the few jade slips in the cultivation method area, and then looking at the talisman crafting, alchemy, incantation, incantations, and so on, Xiao Hua understood. Even in the Imperial Thunder sect, cultivation methods are extremely scarce. Standing in the pavilion, Xiao Hua pondered for a moment, then threw the token into the ball of light next to the Foundation establishment light ball. Sure enough, this ball of light also released a flight of stairs. Needless to say, this should be the qi refining light ball. Xiao Hua stepped onto the flight of stairs and entered the ball of light. After the time it takes to eat a meal, he came out of the ball of light. At this time, Xiao Hua held two small booklets in his hands and a trace of a smile on his face. Soon after, Xiao Hua, like the Foundation establishment cultivator, also threw the token into a blank scroll and entered the quiet room. For 10 days in a row, Xiao Hua stayed in the technique imparting pavilion. He constantly took out cultivation methods from the balls of light, went to the quiet room to study them, and then changed to take out other cultivation methods. Alas, these cultivation methods, only 50% of them are complete. The rest are mostly incomplete cultivation methods collected from other places in the country of Xi. And within these 50% cultivation methods, I feel that half of them are similar, only adjusted according to different constitutions. If I really cultivate it, it might not be as fast as I's heavenly laws embodiment technique. After Xiao Hua placed a cultivation technique back into the ball of light, he thought to himself, it's true that I can comprehend it in the quiet room, but the spiritual qi of heaven and earth inside is insufficient, so it's very difficult to make any breakthroughs. Right now, I don't need to look at cultivation methods anymore. I should look at spells and the like first. That's the right thing to do. After watching for several more days, Xiao Hua finally came out from the Technique Inheritance Pavilion. Seeing that the Foundation building disciples on duty all around paid no attention to him, he could only cup his hands and walk away. After returning to the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden, Xiao Hua opened the magic array and checked his cave and alchemy room. There were no traces of anything. Then, he relaxed and went into seclusion to cultivate. Unknowingly, another 10 days had passed. At noon, Xiao Hua had just placed an absorption pill into his mouth. That trace of medicinal power had just been refined and transformed into true qi. Xiao Hua only felt that the true qi within his meridians had begun to slightly fluctuate. Soon after, as if it was boiling, the true qi began to rapidly circulate along the meridians within his body. Wonderful! Xiao Hua understood that he was about to break through the barrier of the 11th layer of the qi refining realm. Thus, he focused his mind and completely refined the medicinal power of the absorption pill. Then, he urged his true qi to break through the barrier. Just like other qi refining cultivators, breaking through the barrier was far from difficult for Xiao Hua. He only felt his body lighten as his true qi broke through the new meridians. It was like mercury flowing down the ground, incomparably smooth. But right at this moment, a strange change occurred. The magic power around Xiao Hua's body suddenly began to violently tremble, emitting a strange fluctuation. That fluctuation became increasingly intense. This fluctuation was like a kind of flame, instantly igniting all the true qi within his meridians. That true qi was formed from heart fire. Heart fire flowed along the meridians without stop, very similar to when Xiao Hua refined the fire essence flame crystal. However, every time this heart fire moved, Xiao Hua's heart would dry up by a bit. In his heart, there was a kind of longing for a sweet rain. At the same time, every time the heart fire moved, there was a tendency for it to break free from the shackles of the meridians. However, this heart fire was firmly blocked by the meridians. This is the opportunity to stimulate divine sense. It's just as eldest senior brother said. But why did this heart fire ignite on its own? I haven't activated the secret technique yet, have I? Xiao Hua's spirit was blessed, and there was a very familiar feeling. Then, with a wave of his hand, he took out the rainbow epiphyllum that had been growing for who knows how long. In his heart, he silently chanted the secret technique to stimulate divine sense. With a wave of his hand, heart fire came out from Xiao Hua's 5 fingers. The thick rainbow epiphyllum and the several zhang long rainbow were roasted by this heart fire, immediately turning into a large ball of 7-colored liquid. It slightly rotated in Xiao Hua's hand, looking very gorgeous. Isn't it a bit big? Xiao Hua was somewhat dumbfounded. Of course, other people's rainbow epiphyllum were at most 100 years old. After melting, it was only the size of a soybean. How could it compare to his big one? I don't care. Xiao Hua was the most greedy. He knew that this rainbow epiphyllum was very old, and he was unwilling to use only a little. Then, he clenched his teeth and waved his hand. That large ball of 7-colored liquid flew towards Xiao Hua's head. Speaking of which, it was also strange. The 7-colored liquid that was originally larger than Xiao Hua's head, under the Imperial Thunder Sect's secret technique, actually gradually shrank. By the time it touched Xiao Hua's forehead, it had already been compressed to the size of a thumb. It directly shot into the long-disappeared swastika character on Xiao Hua's forehead. With a tongue sound, the 7-colored liquid entering Xiao Hua's body was like adding oil to the fire. The heart fire in Xiao Hua's meridians suddenly flourished, enveloping Xiao Hua's entire meridians within the heart fire. Although Xiao Hua had the experience of refining the fire essence flame crystal, he was still somewhat bewildered. He didn't dare to be negligent and activated the secret technique, sending the 7-colored liquid to his Niwen palace. However, a strange thing happened. The 7-colored liquid didn't condense into a small, like the secret technique said. Instead, it condensed into a rather large sphere. In his perception, it was even larger than Xiao Hua's head. According to the guidance of the secret technique, Xiao Hua should have urged this 7-colored sphere to slowly rotate, absorbing the heart fire in his meridians into this sphere. He should have used the heart fire to forge this 7-colored sphere, giving birth to the first strand of divine sense. However, Xiao Hua's 7-colored sphere was truly too large. The secret technique simply couldn't move it. At this time, Xiao Hua's arrow was already knocked on the bow. He had no choice but to brace himself and activate the secret technique, attracting the heart fire to forge the sphere. Because the sphere didn't rotate, the heart fire couldn't be easily attracted over. The heart fire that Xiao Hua spent a Herculean effort to get was simply a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. It was of no use at all. It couldn't even refine a single bit of the 7-colored sphere. This is bad. I'm too greedy. Xiao Hua was somewhat regretful. It would have been better to use that jade Kirin fruit. However, at this time, the Niwen Palace was occupied by that enormous 7-colored sphere. How could it still contain the jade Qilin fruit? Besides, who knew if there would be a problem if the rainbow epiphyllum and the jade Qilin fruit both melted at the same time? What should I do? Xiao Hua was practically sweating like rain. Suddenly, on Xiao Hua's forehead, where the 7-colored liquid had entered, the swastika character flashed out due to the effect of the rainbow epiphyllum. It reflected the 7-colored liquid and emitted a faint Buddhist light. That's right. Don't I also know the Exquisite Leaf Sutra? Xiao Hua suddenly thought. It seemed that this situation had an extremely similar feeling to the first step of refining relics in the Exquisite Leaf Sutra. Thus, Xiao Hua put aside the Imperial Thunder Sect's secret technique that stimulated divine sense and recalled the contents of the Exquisite Leaf Sutra. Then, according to the records in the Heart Sutra, he began to temper himself. As Xiao Hua tempered the 7-colored liquid in the Niwen Palace, the swastika character on his forehead became more and more obvious, and the Buddhist light also became more and more intense. However, this Buddhist light didn't shoot far, and only enveloped Xiao Hua. In his meridians, the raging heart fire didn't extinguish because Xiao Hua gave up on the secret technique. Nor did it go out of control because the 7-colored liquid didn't absorb it. Instead, it slowly circulated gently in Xiao Hua's meridians like true qi. At the same time, the reverse light in the space stopped rotating, and a tranquil and serene atmosphere filled the entire space. Little Silver and Little Yellow both fell into a deep sleep. At this time, the strange starlight also shot in and was refined one by the heart fire. After who knew how much time had passed, following the tempering of the exquisite leaf sutra, the seven-colored sphere gradually changed shape. A Buddha with one hand pointing to the sky and the other pointing to the ground with an expression of supreme benevolence gradually revealed a vague outline. It was just that this outline was very rough, and most of it was nothingness. So much so that after a slight flash, it only left behind a faint shadow. Of course, the strangest thing was that the Niwen palace where the Buddha's relic was located suddenly bulged out, as if the Buddha had an enormous belly. The Buddha's relic was also slowly rotating along with the spinning, swastika character on Xiao Hua's forehead. The Buddha's relic's empty, illusory face seemed to overlook everything in the world as it rotated. AI, following Xiao Hua's sigh, his Buddha's relic stopped rotating and faced the same direction as Xiao Hua. The swastika character on Xiao Hua's forehead also flashed a few times, and the entire Buddha's light converged, then disappeared without a trace. Although Xiao Hua sighed, he didn't open his eyes. At this time, his perception, "Oh, that's not right." According to the exquisite Leaf Sutra, his perception should be Buddhist awareness. This Buddhist awareness was born from the Buddha's relic, and was who knew how many times more tyrannical than before. Everything within several hundred feet of him was within his Buddhist awareness. Damn it, this shouldn't be divine sense, right? After seeing Buddhist awareness, Xiao Hua wasn't happy at all. Instead, he was a little worried. He was a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, not a disciple of some Buddhist sect. Without divine sense, how was he going to explain this to his master and grandmaster? How was he going to cultivate after he reached foundation establishment? He clearly didn't have divine sense, so how was he going to control magic artifacts and even magic treasures in the future? Greed is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Xiao Hua warned himself again. -7. Chapter 1576. Right. Didn't Master give me a jade qilin fruit? Should I give it a try? Xiao Hua thought and took out the jade qilin fruit. But looking at the ugly jade qilin fruit, Xiao Hua hesitated. What if this jade qilin fruit conflicts with the Buddha's sarira? Will there be another problem? Io, my true chi. Xiao Hua noticed the heart fire in his meridians at this time. Because according to the secret method of the Imperial Thunder sect, the heart fire should be completely absorbed by the rainbow epiphyllum, and new true chi would be produced. Now that Xiao Hua didn't use the heart fire, the new true chi naturally wouldn't be produced. Damn it! Xiao Hua almost jumped. He wanted to stop and send a sound-transmitting talisman to ask eldest senior brother Xiang Yang or Master, but he had no way to explain the rainbow epiphyllum, and also no way to explain the Buddha's sarira. Will the heart fire extinguish on its own? It seems, according to eldest senior brother's teachings, without the secret method of the Imperial Thunder sect, true chi and magic power would only boil for a while, then calm down. Just as Xiao Hua thought about it, he immediately denied it. If it could be extinguished, it would have been extinguished long ago. He had tempered the Buddha's sarira for so long, but it didn't extinguish. How could it be extinguished now? Maybe I should try the secret method of the Imperial Thunder sect and try the jade qilin fruit? Xiao Hua hesitated for the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, then made up his mind. He once again activated the secret method, using the heart fire to melt the jade qilin fruit. Sure enough, after the jade qilin fruit melted, it became a tricolored sphere the size of a soybean. But where should he put this tricolored liquid? When Xiao Hua tried to send the liquid into his Niwen palace to no avail, he faced a new problem. Fortunately, he only hesitated for a moment before he found an excellent position, between the eyebrows of the Buddha's sarira, which was also where the Niwen palace was located. After placing the tricolored liquid of the jade qilin fruit, Xiao Hua still closed his eyes and activated the secret method to rotate the tricolored liquid. Sure enough, following the rotation of the tricolored liquid, the heart fire in his meridians was all sucked around the tricolored liquid. The heart fire surrounded the liquid, fiercely burning it. After an unknown period of time, the three-colored liquid was burned dry with a boom, and the heart flame was extinguished at the same time. Between the Buddha Sarira's eyebrows, a faintly discernible, tiny, that couldn't be any smaller suddenly appeared, and a pure divine thought emerged spontaneously. Green blood for elixir core? God's guidance? For some reason, these two names appeared in Xiaohua's mind. At the same time, he recalled two extremely familiar cultivation technique chants. This time, Xiaohua wasn't surprised, nor did he open his eyes. Instead, he calmed his heart and recalled the chant of God's guidance in his mind over and over again, hoping to recall something else. Unfortunately, the chant flowed through his mind like a clear stream of water, pure and without any other impurities. After waiting for a long time, Xiaohua slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were somewhat perplexed as he pondered. That nameless chant is clearly the same as the exquisite leaf scripture, but it is a bit superficial. I'm afraid it was also lost by that Buddhist sect. And this God's guidance is actually a cultivation technique with 9 levels. It seems it is somewhat related to my Imperial Thunder sect's secret technique. If I were to compare the secret technique with the nameless chant, then this God's guidance would be the exquisite leaf scripture. Moreover, when I was trying to cultivate God's guidance, I faintly felt a kind of reaction from the location of the Niwen Palace. It's just that this reaction is based on the feeling of the cultivation technique, so it can't be taken seriously. But the problem is, every human must have a Niwen Palace. Where does a cultivator's divine thought come from if they don't have a Niwen Palace? Since I can't feel the Niwen Palace, then the Niwen Palace must have an abnormality. And this abnormality isn't ordinary, it's serious. Even that Empress, with her incredible divine ability, couldn't sense it, so how can I deal with it now? After a few thoughts, Xiaohua dismissed the idea of using God's guidance to forcefully sense the Niwen Palace. He already knew that in this cultivation world, there were countless people with remarkable abilities. His own background was unknown, so he was afraid that he had some background. Of course, if he didn't have absolute confidence, he would rather suffer some grievances than alert the enemy and put himself in a disadvantageous situation in advance. The newly born divine thought was extremely weak. It was far inferior to Xiaohua's previous perception, not to mention the Buddhist sense that had undergone a metamorphosis. Xiaohua tried to control his divine thought to familiarize himself with his new divine thought. He also used the records of the exquisite leaf scripture to control his Buddhist sense. Comparing the two, Xiaohua was somewhat confused. These two things seemed to have the same use, but he felt that there were some differences in the nature of the two. It was like looking at a mountain. Divine thought, you could see the mountain, but you could also see mountains after mountains. On the other hand, Buddhist sense could see the mountain, but it could also see the mountain within the mountain. Good. I'm afraid I'll have to ask Master about this kind of profound matter. But immediately after, Xiaohua thought to himself, since Qian Mingwei and the others have been investigating this matter for several decades, Master, I'm afraid he might not know. At this moment, the command medallion in Xiaohua's bosom suddenly changed. Xiaohua impatiently took out the command medallion, flew into the air, and opened the formation. He saw that outside the formation, Zhang Ming was also impatient. As soon as he saw Xiaohua, he berated, Xiaohua, since you know that today is the day to turn in the flame dawn grass, why didn't you open the formation? Could it be that you've already forgotten the lesson from 2 years ago? What? Xiaohua was stunned. He didn't expect that he had only gone into seclusion once to break through the barrier of the 12th layer of the refinement realm and refine the Buddha Sarira. All of a sudden, he had spent a year's time. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and smiled apologetically. Senior Martial Brother Zhen, Disciple returned late yesterday. This morning, Disciple went to the mountain to pick the flame dawn grass. I was afraid of delaying Senior Martial Brother's matter, so, no need to say any more, quickly bring the flame dawn grass. Jinming stretched out his hand and shouted. Oh, Senior Martial Brother, please wait a moment. Disciple still has some left. I'll go pick it right away. Xiaohua cupped his hands and quickly flew back. Fortunately, Jinming only frowned slightly and didn't follow him. He stood in the air and looked around in boredom. Not long after, Xiaohua turned back and handed over the storage pouch. Zhenming opened it and looked, then handed an empty storage pouch to Xiaohua and asked, "What about the other spirit herbs? Did they continue to grow?" Xiaohua knew that he wouldn't come in, so he smiled and said, "Most of them can't be grown, but some have just sprouted." "Humph, I knew it was impossible." Zhenming didn't say anything else and flew back to the Thunder Hall. Looking at Zhenming's departing figure, Xiaohua faintly smiled. He took out the command medallion and closed the Eastern Ridges formation. Then, he circulated his magic power and used the lightning escape technique to rush towards the myriad Thunder Valley. Far away in the Xuanyan Mountain of the Xuanyan School, there was a towering mountain peak. This mountain peak was different from the other mountains around it. There was no forest or grass on the mountain, only a layer of ice and craggy rocks. At the bottom of the mountain, there was a huge cave. From the top of the cave, there were many ice pillars as thick as a human arm hanging down, blocking the cave. At this time, in front of the cave, Jieqiong Fairy was leading several Foundation Establishment stage disciples to land on the smooth ground. "Open the seal." Jieqiong Fairy's face had a trace of joy, but also more confusion as she whispered, "Yes, disciple understands." Two older cultivators took 2 steps forward. Each of them held a crystal-clear jade disc in their hands. When they circulated their magic power, the jade disc emitted a sky-blue brilliance. Then, from the jade disc, half of an ice sparrow flew out. Each of them flapped a wing, which looked very strange. The 2 halves of the ice sparrow merged together in mid-air, forming a complete ice sparrow. Then, the 2 disciples looked at each other, circulated their magic power at the same time, pointed their hands, and shouted, "Go!" The ice sparrow slammed into the icicles in front of the cave. The entire cave flashed with the same sky-blue brilliance and was annihilated. Instantly, the numerous icicles disappeared, revealing the dark cave entrance. Jieqiong Fairy didn't seem to hesitate. She flew into the cave entrance and flew down the mountain. The cave was winding and extremely deep. After flying for the time it took for an incense stick to burn, they arrived at a place that looked like an ice palace. This was also a rather large space. Everything inside was carved out of ice. There were birds and beasts, famous flowers and strange plants, and there were even some things of the mortal world that were sparkling and translucent. Jieqiong Fairy flew to the center of the ice palace. In front of an exquisite house, she patted her hand and took out a token. She threw it at the door of the house. When the token touched the cold door, it immediately flashed a brilliance and sank into the door. In a moment, the whole house strangely melted, revealing a round hole on the ground. Jieqiong Fairy was not in a hurry to enter the cave. Instead, she released her divine sense and looked around before flying into the cave. After the cave, there was another deep cave that was bitingly cold. The 4 walls of this deep cave were inlaid with a lot of moonstones. But in the cold, the moonstones' brilliance was dim, as if they couldn't go very far. When Jieqiong Fairy and a group of Foundation Establishment stage cultivators behind her entered this deep cave, they immediately looked at the 5 Qi refining stage cultivators who were sitting cross-legged around the cave. Clap, clap. Jieqiong Fairy patted her hand, and the 5 cultivators opened their eyes at the same time. Their faces were full of joy as they looked at Jieqiong Fairy. "You all wait here. This time's cultivation ends here." "Yes, disciple understands. We will follow martial ancestors' order." The 5 cultivators stood up at the same time. One of them was Xiao Mao. "Go. Each of you take one and follow me back to Golden Goose Mountain." Jieqiong Fairy looked around and scolded. "Yes, disciple understands." 5 of the Foundation Establishment stage cultivators stepped forward, and each of them grabbed a disciple and followed Jieqiong Fairy out of the deep cave. Not knowing how far away from Xuanyan Mountain, in a mountain forest surrounded by white clouds, countless birds and beasts were leisurely flying. Dang! A bell rang. Not only did it scare away the birds and beasts, but it also shook the clouds away. Gradually, in the depths of the mountain forest, at the foot of the mountain, in front of a magnificent palace, a white-clothed cultivator was quickly entering the palace. This person was the Foundation Establishment stage, Li Zongbao. -7. Chapter 1577. Li Zongbao was still as graceful as ever. He didn't appear arrogant or domineering just because he had reached the foundation establishment stage at such a young age. Even when the young disciples who were at the 7th or 8th level of qi refining came out of the palace and respectfully saluted him, he only smiled and nodded. This kind of humility was like the warmth of the spring breeze, warming people's hearts. Li Zongbao entered the palace and saw that it was empty. In the middle of the palace, there was an incense burner that was as tall as 2 people. Incense was floating from the top. A skinny cultivator with pure white hair was sitting cross-legged in front of the incense burner. He seemed to be meditating with his head lowered. This cultivator was Li Zongbao's master, Heng Zhao. Li Zongbao didn't dare to make a sound. He took 2 light steps and stood inside the palace with his hands behind his back. After a while, a slightly old voice came from the incense burner. Zongbao, you have reached the foundation establishment stage for several years. Have you stabilized your realm? In front of the incense burner, Heng Zhao, who had his back facing Li Zongbao, had turned around. His pair of bright eyes stared at Li Zongbao and asked kindly. Hearing this, Li Zongbao took a few steps forward and came in front of Heng. He bowed and said with a smile, Good. Master knows that this disciple's realm has already stabilized in the 2nd year. In these few years, I have been steadily improving, and there has been no stagnation. Well, that's good. The foundation establishment stage is just a small beginning for you. The core formation stage is your real test. The foundation establishment stage is not like the qi refining stage. All the details must be cultivated. Do not be careless. Disciple understands. Thank you, Master, for your teachings. Li Zongbao said respectfully. Heng Zhao smiled again. A few years ago in the country of Xi, although you revealed the soul accumulation talisman a little early and your qi refining was not complete, I have asked you to slow down your cultivation for the past few years. I presume you have more or less made up for your previous mistakes. Yes, Master. Good. In the 100-zhang peak of the kingdom of Xi, you killed a devil from the devil realm, Heng Ming said while clapping his hands. But Li Zongbao frowned and said carefully, Master, that blood shadow devil was not killed by me. Ah, Zongbao. Heng Ju shook his head slightly. I know you're magnanimous and disdain to steal credit from others, but that little rogue cultivator is only at the 2nd level of qi refining. If you hadn't restrained the demon's blood shadow, how could he have destroyed it? At the end of the day, he was just taking advantage of the magic tool. He was lucky that you didn't snatch it from him. What credit can he claim? Li Zongbao blinked and remained silent. What's more, you represented the Lian Kingdom and the Utopia faction at the 100 feet peak. You killed the blood shadow of the devil realm, and the Utopia faction deserved the credit. After you came back to report to me, I reported this matter to the sect leader. This is a great contribution of the Utopia faction after the battle in the Imperial Demon Valley. The sect leader has already reported this matter to the Celestial Alliance. But I don't know why the Celestial Alliance hasn't rewarded us yet. Looking at his master's white hair and the ardent hope on his face, Li Zongbao sighed in his heart and nodded. This disciple understands. What master said is true. Haha, that's right. This is related to the reputation of the Utopia faction. How can it be taken lightly? Although Heng Ming said this, he still shook his head. He glanced outside the hall and said, During the trip to the country of Xi, you investigated the matter of Ming Yang. Your martial uncle Cho Hui is very grateful and has praised you in front of me several times. That's nothing. Ming Yang joined the Utopia faction with great difficulty. He just made some progress in his cultivation and then died. I'm afraid Uncle Cho is very sad, right? It's not sad at all. Heng Ming sighed. He just wanted to help him on the road of cultivation because of his bloodline. Since he couldn't do it, he naturally had to give up. Now that you've found out the cause of this matter, your Uncle Master won't be worried about you anymore. That's why he's grateful to you. In fact, when he led Ming Yang into the Utopia faction, I had advised him against it. Mortals have their pleasures and cultivation families have their means. Our cultivation faction is very different from theirs. If we lead a disciple with an unstable foundation into the cultivation faction, it's tantamount to pulling a seedling to help it grow. It's not good for Ming Yang and your Uncle Cho Hui. Hearing this, Li Zongbao's mouth twitched slightly. There was a trace of helplessness in his eyes. He whispered, actually, this disciple understands Uncle Cho Huey's, humph. Hung Ming snorted coldly. You understand, but you can't do what he did. Now he's caught in his own trap. He has worries in his heart, and his cultivation hasn't improved for a long time. Previously, his cultivation was only slightly lower than mine. But now, he's only at the initial stage of the gold core realm. Looking at the situation, although the family's matter has come to an end, he's now cut off his worries and his cultivation should be able to improve. But the most suitable time has passed. I'm afraid he won't be able to conceive a baby in this life. A trace of despair appeared in Li Zongbao's eyes again. He seemed to be in pain, but this pain was quickly annihilated. How could Hung Ming see it? I called you here today to tell you that your Uncle Cho Hui just sent a message. The Taiching faction of the Ming Kingdom will host the Feather Fairy Gathering next year, and sent an invitation to the Utopia faction. Your Uncle Cho Hui has accepted the disciple selection for the Feather Fairy Gathering. According to his idea, he wants to give you a hand and let you be the deputy leader of the team. What do you think? Hearing this, Li Zongbao pondered for a moment and said in a low voice, I appreciate Uncle Cho Huey's kindness. But the Feather Fairy Gathering is in the Ming Kingdom. This is related to the reputation of the Utopia faction. I'm just a cultivator at the initial stage of the Foundation establishment stage. How can I be the deputy leader? Uncle Cho Huey's idea is somewhat inappropriate. Hung Ming waved his hand and said with a smile, You don't have to worry about this kind of thing. Your Uncle Cho Hui won't assign you casually. The Feather Fairy Gathering is just a gathering of cultivators at the peak of the Qi refining stage. It's a chance to show off the strength of our faction and communicate with the disciples of other factions. Even if there is any victory or defeat, it's just a child's play in our eyes. Don't take it seriously. You're just a cultivator at the initial stage of the Foundation establishment stage. It's just right for you to go there. Li Zongbao understood what his master meant. He had stepped into the Foundation establishment stage at a young age and was considered an outstanding cultivator among the various factions of the Lian Kingdom. If he went there as the deputy leader, he didn't need to participate in the exchange and could use his age to show off the strength of the Utopia faction. He was indeed a very good candidate. So Li Zongbao cupped his hands and said, I'll listen to Master and Uncle Cho Huey's instructions. Okay, then you should make some preparations. Refine and familiarize yourself with your magic artifacts. The Feather Fairy Gathering will be held next year. At that time, a disciple will inform you. Hung Ming waved his hand and said, Yes, I know. Li Zongbao nodded and then asked, I wonder if this year's Feather Fairy Gathering will still be held in the Xi Nation, the Ming Kingdom, or the Lian Kingdom? Yes, of course. Hung Ming said impatiently, When did the Hung Kingdom participate? What about the cultivation families? Will they participate? Humph. How could they be qualified to participate? Hung Ming sneered and said, The Feather Fairy Gathering has always been a matter of the cultivation families. What does it have to do with them? Yes, I understand. I'll take my leave now. Li Zongbao didn't dare to say anything more. He bowed and was about to leave. Just then, Hung Ming suddenly asked, Zongbao, have you made a breakthrough in your parting love treasure mirror? Li Zongbao smiled bitterly and said in a low voice, I feel that I'm about to make a breakthrough. But there's always a barrier in front of me. I know the door, but I can't enter it. Mortal bond. Inner demon. Worry. Hung Ming said without hesitation, The parting love treasure mirror is the best cultivation method of the Taiching sect. It's the best way to cultivate to the gold core stage. At the same time, it's also the basic incantation to cut off mortal thoughts and condense a nascent soul with a pure heart. Zongbao, you have to take care of yourself. I understand. Li Zongbao lowered his head and replied with a slightly changed expression. After Li Zongbao left, Hung Ming only glanced outside the hall. He then turned around and closed his eyes to adjust his breathing. As for Xiao Hua, after leaving the Eastern Mountain Herb Garden, he used the lightning escape technique. His speed was much faster than before. He flew straight to Wu Xian's cave in the 10,000 Thunder Valley. Before he landed, a divine sense swept past him. Xiao Hua was very familiar with that divine sense. It was Wu Xian. Xiao Hua smiled and tried to release his own divine sense. When the two divine senses met, Wu Xian's divine sense immediately retracted, as if he was afraid of damaging Xiao Hua's divine sense. Then, Wu Xian's laughter came from the cave in the distance. Ha ha ha, as expected of a disciple of the 10,000 Thunder Valley, you broke through to the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm in just a year. Your divine sense is also very authentic. Then, Wu Xian and Xiang Yang appeared in the distance. When they arrived, Xiang Yang also smiled and said, "Congratulations, little junior brother." Xiao Hua bowed to the two and said with a smile, "This is all because of Master's teachings and eldest senior brother's supervision." Ha ha ha. Wu Xian laughed again as if he really taught Xiao Hua. He then waved his hand and said, "Go. Your master's wife has prepared a gift for you. See if it's suitable." When he heard that there was something to take, Xiao Hua immediately beamed with joy. He then followed Wu Xian and Xiang Yang into the cave. Inside the cave, Zhuo Minghui and Yin Qinglian had already prepared the spirit wine and spirit fruits. When they saw Xiao Hua, they naturally congratulated him. When everyone was seated, the first thing Xiao Hua smelled was the fragrance of the emerald green spirit wine in the wine cup. This fragrance was very refreshing, fragrant, and pleasant. It was many times more tempting than the wine he tasted in the young immortal's cave. Good, good. No wonder eldest senior brother nagged Master. This spirit wine is really good. Xiao Hua thought, but his eyes were glued to the wine cup. Cough, cough. Wu Xian coughed and said, "Today is the happiest day in the 10,000 Thunder Valley. Since Xiao Hua entered the 10,000 Thunder Valley, he has been diligently cultivating. His cultivation has been constantly improving. Today, he has finally stepped into the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm. Although he hasn't built his foundation, his divine sense has already been stimulated." Looking at Xiao Hua's cultivation, if nothing unexpected happens, building his foundation won't be a problem. It can be said that he already has 1 foot in the foundation establishment realm. Xiang Yang's face was also full of smiles. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but after hesitating for a moment, he closed it again. He helplessly raised his wine cup and said with a smile, "Everyone, let's toast to the happy occasion of my 10,000 Thunder Valley." "Thank you, Master." Xiao Hua was very happy. He raised his wine cup and looked at everyone. After waiting for everyone to drink the wine, he also raised his head and poured the spirit wine into his mouth. As the spirit wine entered his throat, a burning feeling emerged from his throat. That feeling rushed to his head and flowed into his body along with the spirit wine. Ah? Xiao Hua didn't expect the spirit wine to be so spicy. He couldn't help but cry out, -7. Chapter 1578. When Xiao Hua cried out, that spicy taste rushed to his nose and mouth. His eyes couldn't help but tear up, and those tears almost burst out. Just when Xiao Hua felt that he was being rude and wanted to wipe it away, that spicy taste suddenly flipped and actually turned into an extremely cool and refreshing feeling. A wave of comfort formed in Xiao Hua's body. However, before Xiao Hua could carefully savor this comfortable feeling, that cool and refreshing feeling changed again, and the spicy taste appeared again. Ouch! 9 transformations of spirit wine. Xiao Hua suddenly thought of what Xiang Yang said before. As expected, in just a few breaths, the 9 layers of spicy and refreshing feeling became stronger and stronger, tormenting Xiao Hua. However, after the spicy and refreshing feeling passed, no matter if it was his body or meridians, there was an incomparable feeling, making Xiao Hua extremely comfortable. His entire body slumped on the chair, and he didn't even want to move a finger. After a while, Xiao Hua saw that everyone was looking at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. He hurriedly straightened up and said with a smile, "Master, this spirit wine is indeed special. Not bad, right? Do you want another cup?" Helplessly smiled. "Don't, Master. This is good, but disciple doesn't have the fortune to enjoy it. I really can't stand the feeling of surprise in the wine." Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand. Disciple still likes the peaceful and fragrant spirit wine from eldest senior brother's place. Xiao Hua, I see that you're not a person who adheres to old customs. Why do you like that kind of spirit wine? Helplessly curiously said, "Only people like your eldest senior brother who don't want to make progress like the faint taste." Xiaohua bitterly smiled and said, "Disciple's nature is a peaceful person, and I don't like the taste of wine. On the contrary, eldest senior brother has always been thinking about master's spirit wine. Humph. Today is to celebrate you stepping into Qi refinement level 12, so I let him drink a cup. Otherwise, let him cultivate to foundation building middle stage first. At that time, I'll let him drink all the spirit wine here." Helplessly said angrily, "Master, can disciple drink a few more cups today?" Xiaohua smiled. "Of course." Helplessly nodded. "Hee, Xiaohua, master's wife's spirit wine. You can't drink more than 3 cups for the first time, or else it will be detrimental to your mind." Xiang Yang wasn't angry and only reminded Xiaohua, "Then disciple will drink 3 cups today." As Xiaohua spoke, he picked up the wine cup in front of Yin Qinglian, filled his own cup to the brim, and brought it in front of Xiang Yang. He said, "However, this disciple's alcohol tolerance isn't high enough. Let eldest senior brother drink this cup on my behalf." "Io, junior brother." Xiang Yang didn't expect this at all. He quickly got up and waved his hand. "This is a gift from master. Eat it." "Eldest senior brother, ever since I came to the Myriad Thunder Valley, master has been very busy. Only eldest senior brother has been guiding me in my cultivation. I am a loose cultivator, so there are very few people guiding me in my cultivation. Today, I was able to reach the 12th layer of Qi, refining all thanks to Senior Martial Brother's guidance. If I don't drink a toast to Senior Martial Brother, I'll feel bad." If he felt apologetic, wouldn't there be a knot in his heart? "If eldest senior brother doesn't drink this cup of wine, I won't be able to get rid of the knot in my heart. My future cultivation will be a problem." This, Xiang Yang's face turned dark red. He looked at Xiao Yan's helpless face. He waved his hand and said, "It's your junior brother's kind intentions. You should drink it. His cultivation. You've really worked hard." "Yes." Disciple doesn't dare to claim credit. Xiang Yang's eyes were filled with tears as he received the wine cup. Xiaohua said in a low voice, "I've used this wine cup before. Eldest senior martial brother, please don't dislike it." Hee. Xiang Yang had a smile on his face as he looked at Xiaohua. Then, he raised his head and drank the spirit wine. Xiaohua picked up the wine pot and walked in front of Yin Qinglian. He said with a smile, "Junior brother will ask senior martial sister to drink this 3rd cup. Junior martial sister's care for me is something that I can't express with words." Yin Qinglian stood up and received the wine cup. She didn't panic in the slightest. She seemed to know that Xiaohua would do this. She smiled and said, "It's Xiang Yang's good fortune to have a junior martial brother like you. Although junior martial brother's current cultivation is still too low, his future is limitless. I can't say much about the Myriad Thunder Valley, but I and your eldest senior martial brother will need your care in the future." She drank the spiritual wine in one gulp. Xiaohua smiled and said, "Don't worry, senior martial sister. I don't dare to promise senior martial sister and eldest senior martial brother, but as for Xiang Zhili, I promise you." Yin Qinglian naturally heard Xiang Yang's arrogant words and knew who Xiang Zhili was. Her face immediately turned red. Zhuo Minghui laughed and scolded, "You child, you're really naughty." "Yes, Xiang Yang, Qinglian, Xiaohua was right. I've been busy with the sect's affairs, and you've also worked hard on the Myriad Thunder Valley. Master will also give you a toast." Helplessly, he suddenly said, "Master." Xiang Yang was shocked and felt extremely uncomfortable. Helplessly, he waved his hand. 2 lines of wine flew out from the wine pot in Xiaohua's hand and landed in the 2's wine cups. Only then did Xiang Yang choke and said, "Disciple is unworthy and has shamed master. Don't talk nonsense. Just drink when I tell you to." Helplessly, he shouted and interrupted Xiang Yang's words. Only then did Xiang Yang feel the spirit wine pouring into his stomach and said, "Thank you, master." Beside him, Yin Qinglian's face was still red. She drank the spirit wine unhurriedly and said, "Thank you, master, for the spirit wine." Receiving Helplessly's praise, Xiang Yang was very excited. Everyone talked for a while. Xiang Yang gathered his courage and said in a low voice, "Actually, youngest junior martial brother's talent is outstanding. He's a genius cultivator, but he was a loose cultivator before and practiced 3 kinds of cultivation methods. Shut up. Helplessly was unhappy and scolded. Husband. Zhuo Minghui was also unhappy and said in a low voice, Xiangyang is right. You have placed too much hope on Xiaohua. I'm afraid the child will have too much burden. Xiangyang is also thinking for Xiaohua. Humph. Helplessly, he didn't dare to glare at Zhuo Minghui and could only glare at Xiangyang. Xiaohua also understood Xiangyang's meaning and said with a smile, Thank you for your kindness, eldest senior martial brother. Disciple also knows master's thoughts. However, disciple will do his best to build his foundation. After all, this is related to disciple's future, so disciple won't be careless. Of course, if there are any mistakes, master should be able to understand. Nonsense, helplessly said angrily. How can there be any mistakes? You have a concealed fire physique, which is very fierce. Building your foundation's bottleneck is nothing difficult. Okay, husband, don't talk about building your foundation anymore. Xiaohua has just reached the early stage of the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. No matter what, there's still 4 to 5 years until he builds his foundation. During this time, let Xiangyang give him more pointers. If you have time, you should also go and take a look. With Xiangyang and your help, Xiaohua probably won't repeat the same mistakes. Okay, helplessly, he muttered. Zhuo Minghui was displeased. She clapped her hands again and took out a red net-shaped magic tool. She handed it to Xiaohua and said with a smile, Master's wife wanted to give you a meeting gift a few years ago, but who knew that there wasn't anything suitable? Today, you've entered the 12th layer of the aura refining realm and also have your own divine sense. This magic tool is just right for you. Xiaohua was overjoyed. He stepped forward and received it. After thanking Zhuo Minghui, he picked up the magic tool and carefully examined it. He saw that this magic tool was made up of thin crimson silk threads connected together. The place where each silk thread interweaved was decorated with tiny top-grade spirit stones. On top of the silk threads, there were faint flashes of runes. When the runes slightly flashed, the top-grade spirit stones also flashed. Master's wife, what's the name of this magic tool? Xiaohua looked at the magic tool. He didn't know whether he liked this magic tool or liked the fact that there were so many top-grade spirit stones on the magic tool. He was smiling so widely that he couldn't close his mouth. Hee, I'll let you know. My Imperial Thunder Sect has a famous magic tool called By Fong Roaring Sky Cover. Zhuo Minghui said with a smile. Ah, Master's wife, isn't this too precious? Xiaohua was shocked when he heard this. Humph, you actually want that By Fong Roaring Sky Cover. Helplessly said unhappily, that By Fong Roaring Sky Cover doesn't like you. Xiaohua smiled and didn't say anything else. You silly child. This isn't some magic tool. It's a fake that the sect's weapon refiner imitated. It can be considered a magic tool. Zhuo Minghui glared at helplessly and said, that By Fong Roaring Sky Cover is woven from the essence of leaf fire. There's a leaf fire formation within it. Leaf fire formation? Xiaohua suddenly thought of the formation in his Eastern Ridge medicinal garden. When the By Fong Roaring Sky Cover is activated, it can absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth from its surroundings and transform it into leaf fire. If one is enveloped by the By Fong Roaring Sky Cover and doesn't have a magic tool that can restrain leaf fire, then there's absolutely no way for them to escape. This magic tool is refined from the silk of the Southern Light Fire Silkworm. Although there's a formation on the silk, it's simple and far inferior to the leaf fire formation. Moreover, although the silk of the Southern Light Fire Silkworm is precious, it can't absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth from its surroundings after all. It can only add top-grade fire attribute spirit stones on top of this silk. Zhuo Minghui explained. As for the name, when this magic tool is activated, several fire crows will be born within it. There's no harm in calling it Spirit Crow Fire Net. How about it? Haha, many thanks for the name, Master's wife. Xiaohua very happily thanked her. However, this Spirit Crow Fire Net has a shortcoming. Zhuo Minghui smiled and waved her hand. This magic tool relies entirely on top-grade fire attribute spirit stones. If one is missing, there'll be a flaw in the formation. If too many are missing, it'll be completely useless. You'll have to prepare more fire attribute spirit stones in the future. When Xiaohua heard this, he curled his lips and said, Master's wife, you're making things difficult for me. Where can I get top-grade fire attribute spirit stones? Junior martial brother doesn't need to worry. I still have a few pieces. I'll have your senior martial sister take them for you. Xiang Yang hurriedly said, Hee, it won't be too late to take them later. As she spoke, Zhuo Minghui took out a jade slip and handed it to Xiaohua, saying, This is the method to refine this magic tool. There are also some methods to refine other magic tools. Master's wife remembers that you once asked your master for this, right? When? Xiaohua stared blankly. He hurriedly took it and said with a smile, Many thanks, Master's wife. Many thanks, Master. That's right. I have a question I want to ask Master. And ask away. Seeing this, Xiaohua didn't ask anymore and said with a smile. -7. Chapter 1579. Master, when Disciple was participating in the selection, I saw that the disciples of influential families who were in the 12th layer and even the 11th layer of the aura refining realm were holding their ancestral magic tools. Since they entered my Imperial Thunder Sect, did those magic tools also fall into the hands of my Imperial Thunder Sect? Ha ha ha, he laughed helplessly. You brat, how is that possible? Those magic tools were passed down from the ancestors of various cultivation families. How could they benefit my Imperial Thunder Sect? Besides, once those disciples entered my Imperial Thunder Sect, they were my Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples. How could they still use their family's magic tools? A year later, when those disciples officially joined my Imperial Thunder Sect, those magic tools were given out of Thunderclap Peak. Oh, so that's how it is. Xiaohua was somewhat regretful. Disciple thought those magic tools all belonged to my Imperial Thunder Sect. Maybe Disciple could even get one. In your dreams. He snorted helplessly, then asked, Let's not talk about anything else. Tell me about the process of advancing to the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. It's already been more than a year. Let me listen. See if there are any deviations. Xiaohua knew this would happen. He had already thought about it on the way here. He would only give up on the Buddha's Saraira and tell everything else in full detail. What? Your true qi was actually ignited by the heart fire? He helplessly looked at Zhuo Minghui. Xiang Yang also looked at Yin Qinglian in astonishment. The four of them were all foundation-building cultivators and also came from the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. They had never heard of Xiaohua's abnormality. Maybe it's because of the body of hidden fire? Xiang Yang hesitated. He helplessly thought for a long time, then nodded and said, That's the only way. Fortunately, Xiaohua has the Jade Qilin fruit and my Imperial Thunder Sect's secret technique. Otherwise, it's really hard to say. Immediately, a smile appeared on his face. This also means that Xiaohua is a disciple of my 10,000 Thunder Valley and can build his foundation. The other four all smiled. Seeing everyone smile, Xiaohua's heart moved. He said, Master, Disciple still has something to ask. What? He asked helplessly. That, the meridians after the 12th layer of the aura refining realm, are there no more? Disciple feels that. Not waiting for Xiaohua to finish speaking, he helplessly slapped the armrest of the chair, stood up, and said angrily, Xiaohua, what do you want me to say to you? Although your mind is flexible, you can deduce many things from one instance, and you know 100 times better than your eldest senior brother. But I can't always take the unconventional path. The 12th layer of qi condensation is the essence of my Imperial Thunder Sect, and even the essence of the various sects and clans of the Dawn Rain continent, over tens of thousands of years. If there were extra meridians, then there would definitely be a 13th layer of qi condensation. But why is there only a 12th layer? Why would there be signs of liquefaction after reaching the 12th layer of qi refining? This means that there are only these qi passageways. There are no other qi passageways. The other qi passageways are for foundation establishment, gold core, and even the nascent soul stage. Why don't you put your mind on how to build your foundation? Why do you have to think about the meridians of the Oris core stage? Do you think you're the only smart person in the world? The more helplessly spoke, the angrier he became. He angrily said, if you want those chi passageways, then go back to Jinlei Palace and take your sect master's order to the Jade Archive Hall. Let the sect master send someone to accept you as a disciple. I don't have the ability to teach you. Master. Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. He promptly bowed and said, Disciple. Disciple was only asking. Why did I think so much? Husband. Zhuo Minghui promptly got up and pulled him back. She helplessly said, Xiao Hua used to be a loose cultivator, so he used his own brain a lot. Now that he's asking, it's to show your prestige as a master. Otherwise, why would he have a master like you? Why don't you tell Xiao Hua properly? Why are you so angry? That's right, master. You always say that disciple is stupid. Xiang Yang also hurriedly tried to persuade her. Shut up, I'm not talking about you. Helplessly angrily said, if only he had half of your abilities. He's only at the 11th layer of chi refining. What lightning evasion technique? What divine sense control technique? What divine accumulation talisman? Don't think that master doesn't know anything. What's the use of those things if you want them early? Don't you still have to wait until you reach the 12th layer of chi refining before you can use them? Yes, master, please calm down. Disciple knows his mistake. Xiao Hua promptly said, Humph, helplessly swinging her sleeves. She turned around and entered the inner mansion. Master! Xiao Hua very anxiously shouted. It's fine, Xiao Hua. Zhuo Minghui forced a smile and said, Your master was also afraid that you would take a detour, so she warned you. These are all my cultivation experiences. You must listen to them and remember them in your heart. Sometimes taking risks is admittedly rewarding, but more often than not, it's all for naught. If there's a smooth path to the heavens, why don't you obediently walk on it? The opportunity to build your foundation is also fleeting. If you don't start building your foundation when there are signs of building your foundation, the chances of building your foundation in the future will be much less. Moreover, there are signs of building your foundation, which means that your meridians have reached the limit of refining true chi. If you don't build your foundation, your magic power won't increase. Even if your meridians have the medicinal power of the clear flower pill, I'm afraid that your meridians won't be able to refine them anymore. You'll only end up with your meridians exploding. Disciple knows. Eldest senior brother has already said these things. Xiao Hua nodded. It's good that you know. Don't think too much. Go out with your eldest senior brother first, and let him guide you in your future cultivation. You can't be too smart for your own good. Zhuo Minghui said, then thought of something and said, Is the restriction on the medicinal power of the clear flower pill good? Before you build your foundation, you still have to let your master use it again. Don't let anything go wrong. Master's wife, last time master checked it, he said that if nothing unexpected happens, the restriction can be used for 10 years. Disciple also didn't notice any abnormalities. Xiao Hua respectfully replied, All right, you can go first. Zhuo Minghui sighed and also entered the inner residence. Xiao Hua could only follow Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian back to their abode. Xiang Yang saw that Xiao Hua was somewhat sad and didn't say anything more. He only let Xiao Hua go back and rest for a few more days. After a period of time, he'll come back to listen to the lecture. Xiao Hua came out of Myriad Thunder Valley. His heart was somewhat chaotic. After flying for a while, he found that the direction was wrong. It seemed to be heading towards Heavenly Thunder Palace. Just as he was about to turn around, he thought to himself, Today I've angered Master. I'm afraid I'll have to apologize to him. Master has always been thinking about the Heavenly Thunder Palace's lightning evasion technique. It's just that he has some misgivings about his face and didn't ask me too much. I've always been busy cultivating. Isn't this a good opportunity? Thinking, Xiao Hua sped up and flew towards Heavenly Thunder Palace's Thunder Immortal Peak. Heavenly Thunder Palace's technique imparting pavilion was in Rumbling Thunder Hall. It was different from Shocking Thunder Palace's technique imparting pavilion. It was a whole ball of lightning. In the middle of the lightning, an 8-story pavilion was faintly visible. After Xiao Hua threw in the sect master's command token and his own identity token, a light path flickered with lightning. At the end of the path was a sky full of stars. Those jade slips and ancient books were like stars decorating the sky. As it turned out, this heavenly Thunder Palace's technique imparting pavilion was actually built on top of an illusion array. Chi refining, foundation building, and other cultivation levels were divided into different starry skies. Each level was higher than the previous, and each level was blocked by a restriction. Xiaohua didn't stay in the Chi refining layer for long. He directly used the sect master's command token to go to the starry skies where the foundation building cultivation method was located. Then, he very easily found the 9th level of the lightning evasion technique. However, he was a little worried. He had no problem reading the jade slips with his divine sense, but if he had to make a copy of the jade slips, he couldn't do it. Not to mention whether the copy of the jade slips could be read or not, he didn't even dare to guarantee that the copy would be complete. Without any other choice, Xiaohua pointed at the sect master's command token. A bright yellow brilliance flew out. In a moment, a huge human figure that filled the starry skies appeared in front of Xiaohua. Disciple Xiaohua has something to trouble Senior with. Seeing this, Xiaohua hurriedly bowed and said, what is a 12th level Qi refining disciple doing here? That cultivator was obviously stunned. Xiaohua also didn't explain much and handed over the sect master's command token. That cultivator looked at it and nodded, saying, Xiaohua, what did you call me for? Disciple wants to make a copy of this lightning evasion technique and bring it out of the technique imparting pavilion. This is also explained in the sect master's command token, right? Xiaohua said with a smile. Wait a moment. That cultivator said as he grabbed a ball of starlight from the starry skies. Sweeping it with his divine sense, he nodded and said, Yes, the sect master has instructed that you can make a copy of the lightning evasion technique. Disciple has just reached the 12th level of Qi refining, and my divine sense is newly formed. I'm afraid the copy won't be good. Senior, please help me. Xiaohua said respectfully. That cultivator slightly wrinkled his brows and said in a low voice, The sect master's command token doesn't allow my technique imparting pavilion to make a copy of the lightning evasion technique. Naturally, you have no right to order this old man. So it's like that. Xiaohua was somewhat disappointed. Just as he was about to speak, that cultivator said again, However, this old man can extend a hand to help you. It's just a small matter. Many thanks, Senior. Xiaohua was overjoyed, but that cultivator waved his hand again. Don't worry, this old man will help you copy the lightning evasion technique. But you also have to help this old man? No problem. If Senior has a favor, how could Disciple dare to disobey? Xiaohua said with a smile. Very good. That cultivator smiled and waved his hand. The jade slip of the lightning evasion technique flew into his hand. He waved his hand again, and another jade slip flew out of nowhere. That cultivator held the technique in one hand and the jade slip in the other. His powerful divine sense locked onto the technique. Soon after, a ball of green light flew out from the jade slip of the lightning evasion technique and penetrated into the jade slip in his other hand. Immediately after, that cultivator threw the lightning evasion technique. The jade slip turned into a star and fell into the starry sky. The other jade slip also flew in front of Xiaohua's eyes. Keep it well. That cultivator said, 10 days later, wait for me here. This old man has something for you to do. 10 days? Xiaohua put away the jade slip and said with a smile, Since it's like this, Disciple won't leave. Disciple will stay here and read the ancient records. It won't be too late to leave after helping Senior finish his task in 10 days. As you wish. That cultivator nodded, then turned into a shadow and disappeared. What does this Senior want me to do? Xiaohua read the lightning evasion technique while secretly pondering. -7. Chapter 1580. 10 days passed very quickly, and Xiaohua's lightning evasion technique didn't make much progress. This lightning evasion technique was different from the one Xiangyang gave him. Just the first level of the introductory technique was already very different. The Heavenly Thunder Palace's lightning evasion technique was very detailed, and the technique was also very hard to pronounce. Many details were even somewhat mysterious. Carefully comprehending it, it was actually like a cultivation technique, far from being as simple as an evasion technique. Moreover, the Heavenly Thunder Palace's lightning evasion technique was divided into 9 levels. From the initial hibernating lightning, awakening lightning, and bright lightning to the middle imperial lightning travel, imperial lightning change, and imperial lightning shock to the late lightning traversing 3 realms, lightning surpassing 6 paths, and thunderclap 9th heaven. Each realm's name was very arrogant, and according to the records, the speed of the lightning evasion at each level was more than double. Damn it! I just cultivated this lightning evasion technique to the first level, which is the hibernating lightning realm, and the speed is already so fast. If I cultivate it to thunderclap 9th heaven, then I don't know how many times faster it would be. Wouldn't it be faster than the light evasion mentioned in reversing light? Xiaohua was somewhat dumbfounded. At this time, he also understood why his master was so grateful when he heard Master Heavenly Thunder bestowing him the Heavenly Thunder Palace's lightning evasion technique. However, although Xiaohua thought so, in his bones, he really didn't put the lightning evasion and the light evasion on the same level. Thinking about the difficulty of cultivating the light evasion, how could it be compared to the lightning evasion? Just as Xiaohua was pondering, in the starry sky before him, that foundation establishment cultivator once again appeared. Follow me. That cultivator saw Xiaohua obediently stay in the technique inheritance pavilion and nodded. Yes. Xiaohua responded and followed that cultivator out of the technique inheritance pavilion. After passing through several palaces, they arrived at a side hall. Xiaohua's sharp eyes had already seen a plaque in the side hall with the 2 words Diligent Lightning written on it. Entering the side hall, there was no one else in the hall, only an incense burner in the center of the hall. At this time, the incense burner didn't have any incense or candles, only an oval-shaped burner with crackling lightning. The cultivator led Xiaohua to the front of the incense burner and pointed at it. Throw your identity tablet inside. Xiaohua did as he was told. The token flipped and flew out of the incense burner. When Xiaohua caught it, the cultivator waved his hand and said, "Come with me again." Next to the side hall were some meditation rooms. Xiaohua followed the cultivator into one of the meditation rooms. The cultivator waved his hand, and the entire meditation room flashed with brilliance. The door of the meditation room disappeared. Seeing that Xiaohua's expression didn't change, the cultivator frowned. His eyes turned, and he waved his hand again. A round mirror appeared in front of Xiaohua, and inside the mirror was the portrait of a cultivator. "Did you see it clearly?" the cultivator asked. "Yes, disciple saw it clearly." Xiaohua glanced at it a few times and couldn't help but ask, "May I know what senior wants disciple to do?" "Hee, I thought you were very shrewd, but in the end, I couldn't help but ask." The cultivator snorted and said, "Remember, in a while, you only need to lose to that disciple just now." "Lose to that disciple?" Xiaohua scratched his head, but he still nodded. "Disciple understands. In a while, the competition will be in an illusion. You must have participated in the disciple selection, right? It's similar to that illusion. No matter what method you use, as long as you lose to that disciple, you've completed the mission. You and I don't owe each other anything." Seeing Xiaohua nod, the cultivator said again, "Then you can cultivate here. In a while, a disciple will come and call you. You can go with them." Soon after, the cultivator turned and left. What about the others? Xiaohua saw that the cultivator waved his hand and the brilliance flashed again. He couldn't help but ask again, "The others?" "Hee, do as you see fit." The cultivator laughed mischievously, pushed open the door, and walked out. Seeing that the cultivator didn't speak clearly, Xiaohua also knew that he didn't want to say more. However, since it was in an illusion, even if he lost, there wouldn't be any danger to his life. If he lost, he lost. Xiaohua didn't care. Sure enough, in the time it took to eat a meal, a boy around the 7th layer of qi refining came in. He looked at Xiaohua and said with a smile, "Senior martial brother, are you participating in the selection?" "Yes, please lead the way, junior martial brother." Xiaohua stood up and said, "Please follow this disciple." The boy smiled and led the way. After leaving the quiet room, the censer in the center of the side hall was already gone. Where the censer used to be was now a square ring of light. The ring of light was the size of a fist, and there were countless runes flashing inside. There were also traces of lightning around the runes, and the inside of the ring of light was a vast expanse of white that even divine sense couldn't penetrate. Senior Martial Brother, this selection will be held in an illusion. Presumably, Senior Martial Brother already knows the specific rules. Senior Martial Brother, please take out your identity tablet and step into this illusion formation. Senior Martial Brother's opponent has already been lined up when Senior Martial Brother sent your identity tablet into the illusion formation. The boy pointed with his finger and said with a smile, "I wish Senior Martial Brother a victory." Hee. I'll take advantage of Junior Martial Brother's auspicious words. Xiaohua cupped his hands. He originally wanted to ask, what kind of selection is this? But he was afraid of spoiling the good thing of that cultivator just now, so he could only be a silent gourd. Xiaohua held his identity tablet and stepped into the ring of light. He only felt his vision blur, just like when he entered the illusion formation during the selection. When he opened his eyes again, he was already in a desert. Although he knew this was only an illusion formation, the scorching sun, the dry hurricane, and the fine white sand under his feet were really real. Xiaohua had never been to a desert before. Seeing this, he unconsciously crouched down and grabbed a handful of sand. The sand was very smooth. As Xiaohua slowly let go of his hand, the sand floated in the air and danced with the wind. Damn it, this is really interesting. I don't know if there's a desert in Dawn Rain Continent. I'll find some time to go gain experience. Xiaohua used his foot to step on the sand, leaving a footprint on the desert. But immediately, it was covered by some quicksand at the side. Just when Xiaohua wanted to play a bit more, an aged voice resounded through heaven and earth. Disciples, there are 320 disciples participating in this selection. In every round, there will be 2 disciples facing each other. The disciple who wins in a battle of magical powers will get 3 points. The disciple who loses won't get any points. If it's a draw, each disciple will get 1 point. In the end, the disciple ranked in the top 20 will win. Okay, after 10 breaths of time, the battle of magical powers will begin. Next to each disciple will appear an opponent for this round of magical powers. When Xiaohua heard this, he was happy for no reason. To tell the truth, after he entered the Imperial Thunder sect these past few years, his cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds, leaping to the 12th level of Qi refinement in one go. This was something he didn't even dare to think about when he was a loose cultivator. Moreover, he now had divine sense and several magic tools that he could use. If he didn't find someone to practice with in this illusion formation, it would really be a pity. In any case, as long as I lose to that disciple and I don't have to win too much, wouldn't that be enough? Xiaohua already had a plan in mind. Soon after, Xiaohua waved his hand and the black iron needle appeared in his hand. Suddenly, several dozen feet in front of Xiaohua, the sunlight slightly distorted, and a short and fat cultivator gradually appeared in midair. Xiaohua was secretly happy in his heart. He immediately sent the black iron needle under his feet, slowly flying through the sand towards that cultivator. The sandstorm in this desert was so strong. Xiaohua didn't believe that the cultivator could use his divine sense to find the black iron needle among the thousands of grains of sand. That short and fat cultivator gradually revealed his figure. His body was surrounded by a faint brilliance. Xiaohua knew that this brilliance should be protecting this cultivator, to prevent him from being killed as soon as he appeared. That cultivator originally had his back facing Xiaohua, but when he turned around and saw Xiaohua, his face flashed with a trace of vigilance. When the brilliance on that cultivator's body disappeared, the cultivator's cultivation was revealed. Xiaohua couldn't help but stare blankly. Good. This guy is actually at the peak of the 12th level of Qi refinement. At the same time, that cultivator naturally also saw Xiaohua's cultivation, and a trace of a relaxed smile appeared on his face. Junior Martial Brother, I am Qianyi from Heavenly Thunder Palace. How should I address you? That cultivator cupped his hands and said with a smile. Disciple Xiaohua from Heavenly Thunder Palace greets Senior Martial Brother. Xiaohua also returned the greeting. Junior Martial Brother Xiao has some guts, daring to register with such a cultivation level. Qianyi waved his hand and took out several yellow talismans. He urged his magic power and placed them on his body, but his mouth didn't stop talking. However, it's no wonder. This is an illusion formation. It won't harm your life. It's also not bad to come and see the world. Xiaohua originally wanted to ask about this Qianyi's selection, but after hearing his words, a trace of arrogance rose in his heart. This young master isn't stingy with foundation establishment cultivators. Why would I care about you? A 12th level Qi refinement cultivator? Why would this young master ask you these things? I'll just kill all of you. Finish thinking. Xiaohua urged his magic power, and his whole body floated into the air, flying towards the distance. Haha, junior martial brother Xiao, this elder brother knew you would be like this. Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. This elder brother will just kill you. I won't harm your life. Qianyi laughed loudly and clapped his hand again. A rhombus-shaped magic tool appeared in his hand. At the same time, he also urged his flying technique, chasing after Xiaohua while throwing the magic tool in the air. Once the rhombus-shaped magic tool left his hand, it suddenly expanded, turning into a short spear that was 3 feet long. Surrounded by electric sparks, it pierced towards Xiaohua's back. Seeing that Xiaohua's flying speed wasn't as fast as the short spear, the tip of the short spear extended once again and was about to pierce Xiaohua's back in a few breaths' time. Qianyi's face unconsciously revealed a trace of a smile. I just entered the selection and I already met an extremely weak person. I don't know what this guy is thinking. What is he doing here? Is he just here to give away points to I? Go. Qianyi lightly reprimanded, guiding the short spear with his divine sense and urging his magic power again. The tip of the short spear faintly flashed, seemingly piercing through Xiaohua's defensive restriction. But at this moment, Xiaohua's body suddenly flashed, and he actually dodged the short spear with extreme agility. -7. Chapter 1581. How is this possible? Qianyi couldn't have imagined that Xiaohua would be able to dodge the short spear without using any magic. Because of this, Qianyi didn't have enough time to activate the short spear. The short spear missed. Although Qianyi was shocked, he didn't think much of it. His opponent was just a disciple who had just entered the 12th level of Qi refining. The difference between him and Qianyi wasn't small at all. Unfortunately, this sort of contempt had just arisen in his heart, and he hadn't even had the chance to drive the short spear to chase after Xiaohua when Xiaohua actually dodged the short spear at the same time. Xiaohua's figure suddenly turned around and actually flew towards him. Luring the snake out of its hole? Qianyi was shocked again, but then he sneered. He slapped his hand and was about to take out the flying sword talisman from his storage pouch. However, a shocking scene occurred. As soon as he took out the flying sword talisman, Xiaohua's 2 small eyes suddenly appeared in front of him. Under those slender eyebrows, there was also a pair of phoenix eyes that were full of mockery. Oh no, how can he be so fast? Qianyi cursed inwardly. He activated his magic and was about to release the flying sword talisman. Unexpectedly, Xiaohua shot in front of Qianyi like an arrow. He didn't attack, but instead flew towards Qianyi's head. All that was left was a large stack of yellow talismans. This bastard. What is he doing? Qianyi's attention naturally followed Xiaohua as he flew up. Xiaohua's fireball talismans were completely ignored. Rumble. A series of fireballs exploded around Qianyi. The scorching heat wave blew Qianyi's entire body into the air. Although Qianyi's face was filled with shock and his body flashed with brilliance, it was clear that there was no fear in his eyes. Although Xiaohua used the best quality fireball talismans he made himself, this was still an illusion. The surrounding spiritual energy was different from the outside world. The fireball talisman's explosive power was limited. Moreover, Qianyi was already in the late 12th level of Qi refining. Although he hadn't entered the realm of perfection, but his divine sense had already reached a certain level. His magic could also form a defense around his body. The fireball talisman couldn't do any real damage to him. Oh my, it really is a 12th layer Qi refining cultivator. Xiaohua was also slightly surprised. He immediately waved his hand and scattered even more fireball talismans around the dried leaves. This time, Xiaohua didn't scatter them blindly. Instead, he used his Buddhist consciousness to drive them. The chaotic fireballs were still orderly. So this is your technique? Qianyi laughed loudly. Just as Xiaohua threw out the fireball talisman, the short spear also flew up. Seeing Xiaohua's fireballs coming down, the tip of the short spear trembled. Like a skewer of Tonghulu, it pierced through several bursting fireball talismans all at once. Ha ha ha! Qianyi laughed out loud. The short spear shook again and was about to pierce through another fireball talisman. However, just as the short spear pierced through, the remaining fireball talismans swam away like fish, one by one flying towards Qian Ye's legs and exploding. Feeling the intense vibrations in his legs, Qian Ye's figure staggered slightly. This bastard also knows how to attack together? But if he thinks he can take down a 12th layer Qi refining cultivator with only fireball talismans, I'm afraid he's delusional. Qianyi sneered in his heart, but then he was shocked. Oh my, could it be that this bastard also has a magic weapon? But just as Qian Ye's suspicions were rising, Xiaohua also took out a triangular magic weapon not far in front of him. Oh, so there it is. Qian Ye's heart calmed down. At this moment, several fireball talismans exploded at the same time, causing the defense around his body to be somewhat scattered. Qianyi channeled his magic power, and just as he was about to deplete the magic power of his defense, a huge force suddenly appeared at the place where the fireball talismans exploded. That force was extremely strong and extremely sharp. The already weakened defense brilliance could not stop the force from piercing through. Oh no! Qianyi only had time to lower his head. He didn't even have time to see what was piercing through his legs before his vision turned black. His entire body suddenly disappeared. When he opened his eyes again, he was already in the Thunder Temple. Damn it! Qianyi was about to stomp his feet. He felt that he hadn't even used any divine abilities. How could he be eliminated just like that? Xiaohua only flew a bit faster and had a few more top-grade fireball talismans. Qianyi didn't even see the magic weapon in Xiaohua's hands clearly. Moreover, looking around him, those who were eliminated before him were all mid-12th layer Qi refining cultivators. How could there be a late-stage cultivator like him? Suddenly, Qian Ye's back was drenched in cold sweat. His teeth were about to chatter. Oh my god, could it be this bastard is using two magic weapons? He has one in his hands, and the other is attacking me? Can he really use his divine will to drive two magic weapons? That's something that even early Foundation establishment cultivators can't do. If we met elsewhere, even if my cultivation level was much higher than his, I still wouldn't be his match, right? The problem is, he just reached the 12th layer Qi refining. His divine will should have just been activated. How could he drive two magic weapons? Yes, the one in his hands must be a cover. The one under me is the real magic weapon. Alas, it's not an injustice to be defeated by such a scheming opponent. Qianyi didn't expect that it wasn't just the black iron needle and the black dust. Even those scattered fireball talismans were controlled by Xiaohua's Buddhist consciousness. This was much more difficult than controlling two magic weapons. Inside the illusion, Xiaohua didn't feel any joy after eliminating Qianyi. With a wave of his hand, the black iron needle returned to his hand. Holding the two magic weapons in his hands, he stared fixedly at the place where Qianyi just disappeared. His brows were tightly knitted. After a while, he shook his head slightly and said to himself, Qianyi is only a 12th layer Qi refining cultivator, but his defense is already so strong. My top-grade fireball talismans can certainly make his expression change, but they can't make him panic. Yes, even if he panics and scatters these fireball talismans, they won't be able to produce the expected effect of opening the defense of my black iron needle. I need to think more. My future opponents won't be just 7th or 8th layer Qi refining cultivators. With this thought, Xiaohua calmly stood in midair, allowing the sandstorm to cover him. Perhaps I still need to rely on the black dust? While thinking, Xiaohua formed a hand seal. Magic power spread out, and an earthy yellow brilliance flew out from the black dust. Inside the brilliance were tiny particles. Wherever the brilliance went, the sandstorm above the desert was instantly swept away, revealing a clean sky. Young master got it. Looking at the place where the earthy yellow brilliance had just passed and the sandstorm covered the horizon, Xiao Hua's heart suddenly jumped. He thought of something. At this moment, the world suddenly became quiet. The sandstorm in the desert was no longer. A voice resounded through the world. Disciples, the first round is over. The disciples who won have already recorded their points. Disciples who have been eliminated, please enter the illusion array and prepare for the second round of battle. Haha, Xiaohua only realized at this moment. There were more than 200 people, 2-on-2. That was more than 200 battles. Weren't they afraid of losing their lives? Where else could they find this kind of opportunity to practice? Just as he was laughing loudly, a burst of brilliance flashed around Xiaohua's body. He didn't know which part of the illusion array he was assigned to, but not far from him, Qian Ye's figure appeared again. Xiaohua's vision darkened. He calmly waited for the light to come again. Unfortunately, after a while, Xiaohua's surroundings didn't light up. It was still pitch black. Xiaohua was slightly stunned. Suddenly, a kind of fear came from the top of his head. Xiaohua didn't have time to think. He wanted to dodge, but it was still too late. An incomparably huge pressure came from the top of his head, firmly pressing down on his shoulders and back. This kind of pressure wasn't just pure strength, but more of it was the solidification of magic power. Xiaohua naturally didn't admit defeat. His two arms moved, and he was about to use his divine power. At this moment, a beautiful female cultivator's figure flashed a faint light in front of him. With the help of the light, Xiaohua could clearly see that the female cultivator was also a disciple at the late stage of the 12th stage of qi refining. In the disciple's hand, a flying sword quickly pierced towards his chest. Damn it! Seeing that he couldn't fight back and that defeat was imminent, Xiaohua couldn't help but bitterly smile. Only now did he think of using his divine sense to sweep outside with his Buddhist awareness. Sure enough, this was a pitch-black and boundless sky. Relying solely on the naked eye, he couldn't see anything clearly. He could only rely on his divine sense. And in the pitch-black horizon, a large seal was suspended in midair, firmly pressing down on him. Poor Xiaohua, when the other side had already released their magic tool and was about to attack, he was still thinking of waiting for the light. It would be strange if he wasn't eliminated. At this time, Xiaohua once again lost track of the light. His eyes lit up. He was inside the Thunder Temple. Damn it! Seeing that there were no traces of people around, Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Needless to say, he was the first to be eliminated. At this moment, Xiaohua's eyes swept over. The cultivator who brought him here just now seemed to have coincidentally passed through the temple and was inadvertently looking at him. Seeing that cultivator's gaze sweep over him and no longer pay attention to him, Xiaohua understood in his heart. Looking at the several Foundation establishment disciples standing not too far away, he also lowered his head and inwardly pondered. What kind of selection is this? Humph, who cares? It seems that the illusions of this selection are all different. Just now, if I had released my divine sense earlier, I wouldn't have been so passive. That female cultivator's magic tool is admittedly powerful, but my divine power isn't to be trifled with either. It seems I'll have to release my divine sense often in the future. Immediately, Xiaohua didn't want to waste time. He sat down cross-legged, closed his eyes, and pondered, thinking about how to deal with it in the future. As the number of disciples who were eliminated increased, the surroundings also started to become somewhat clamorous. Low whispers were all coming from disciples who were familiar with each other. But in the midst of this clamor, a somewhat astonished voice rang out. Is that Xiaohua? You're actually already in the 12th layer of the aura refining realm? That voice belonged to a female disciple, but it didn't sound familiar. Xiaohua was somewhat baffled and looked towards the voice. -7. Chapter 1582. Seeing a cool oval face, Xiaohua suddenly realized that this female disciple was Shue's senior sister, Sun Shu. At this time, Sun Shu's cultivation was already at the late stage of qi refining. When Xiaohua saw clearly that it was Sun Shu, he smiled and cupped his hands. So it's senior sister Sun Shu? You, Xiaohua, before you entered my Imperial Thunder sect, were you really a loose cultivator? Sun Shu didn't return the greeting. She stared straight at Xiaohua and asked very directly. Sun Shu's voice wasn't soft. The people nearby had already heard it and unconsciously looked over here. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He knew that Sun Shu was a direct disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. She hadn't experienced the bloody storms of the cultivation world under the Thunderclap Peak. Although her cultivation was high, she was still a bit lacking in worldly wisdom. He could only look left and right and said in a low voice, "My good senior sister, can you speak a bit softer?" Xiaohua's words were very unintentional and did not have much meaning behind them. However, when Sun Shu heard this, her eyes were first stunned and then immediately became angry. However, before her anger could be born, a trace of shyness flashed across her cheeks. However, that bashfulness disappeared in the blink of an eye, and Sun Shu regained her previous cold elegance. At this time, Xiaohua raised his eyebrows and said in a low voice, "This one was originally a loose cultivator and did not have the heart to hide it. Shui also knows this. But senior sister can't say it like this in front of everyone, right? You also know that many people are prejudiced against loose cultivators." Hearing Shui's name, Sun Shu's eyes emitted a strange brilliance. Then, she nodded out of character. "I was negligent. Junior brother Xiao, please don't blame me." Finished speaking, she cupped her hands and turned to leave. "Hey senior sister Sun Shu." Seeing Sun Shu leave very abruptly, Xiaohua raised his hand, wanting to call out to her. "Nonsense. What's the use of this selection?" Xiaohua still wanted to get information from Sun Shu's mouth, but Sun Shu turned a deaf ear to Xiaohua's call and still steadily left. "Damn, I didn't offend you, right?" Xiaohua put down his arm and looked around narcissistically. "I just didn't let you call I a loose cultivator and you have such a big temper? No need to say it's compared to Shui. It's just..." Xiaohua thought of Fairy Hongxia again. "Disciples, the third round begins." A voice sounded in the hall. The voice was exactly the same as the voice in the illusion array. Xiaohua hurriedly ran into the ring of light, but just as he took a step, dozens and hundreds of scarlet-red threads flew out from the ring of light, landing on everyone's bodies. Then, the entire ring of light flashed, and everyone disappeared. It was another spacious hall. Xiaohua only felt his vision darken again. This time, he didn't dare to be careless and released his Buddhist sense early on. Unfortunately, at the same time, his eyes brightened and were filled with blue waves. About 100 feet in front of him, there was a female cultivator in azure clothes. She held a horsetail whisk in her hand and was looking at him with a pensive expression. Stage. When Xiaohua saw the other party's cultivation, he already had a plan in his mind. He cupped his hands and said, "Disciple Xiaohua greets senior sister." No need to be so polite. I am Li Xiao from Mythical Thunder Palace. Since junior brother has come to participate in the selection, you don't need to have any misgivings. I won't be lenient. Please." Li Xiao swung her horsetail whisk, and a water tank-sized stream of water followed the movement of her horsetail whisk towards Xiaohua. This was the first time Xiaohua had seen such a method of using a magic tool. His eyes lit up, and he waved his hand to take out the white dust as well. He activated his magic power, and a yellow light rushed out from the white dust to meet the water flow. Rumble. There was a loud sound. The millions of particles in the light trembled and blocked the stream of water. Junior brother Xiao really has some skills. As Li Xiao praised, she casually waved her horsetail whisk. That stream of water was immediately divided into 10 streams. Like water dragons, they circled in front of the earthen yellow brilliance, bypassed the obstruction of the horsetail whisk, and attacked Xiaohua from all directions. Ouch! Xiaohua immediately became flustered. He formed seals with his hands, and the speck of dust's brilliance blocked left and right. It ignored the front and missed the right side. Pung! That stream of water hit different parts of Xiaohua's body. The power of the stream of water was extremely great, causing him to sway from side to side. The defensive yellow talisman's brilliance on his body also flickered again and again, almost extinguishing. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He activated his magic power, and his body immediately floated up to the sky. With a wave of his hand, he took out a defensive yellow talisman and threw it out. Then, he activated 6 fireball talismans with his Buddhist sense and attacked Li Xiaoxiao from 6 different directions. Strange, this fireball talisman. Why did it miss? Seeing that the fireball talisman didn't hit her directly, Li Xiaoxiao was slightly stunned. However, the horsetail whisk in her hand didn't slow down at all. She swung her horsetail whisk, and another stream of water was sent into the air. It also divided into 10 streams and attacked Xiaohua's body. Rumble. There were 6 loud sounds. 6 fireball talismans exploded around Li Xiaoxiao's body. Haha, junior brother Xiao, you still need to practice your divine sense more. As soon as Li Xiaoxiao said this, she immediately felt the scorching heat waves produced by the fireball talisman rushing towards her from all directions. That heat wave actually sealed off her surroundings, leaving her with no room to escape. Ouch! Li Xiaoxiao was shocked. She glanced at Xiaohua with some astonishment. She didn't think that Xiaohua's 6 fireball talismans missed. That's right. Xiaohua's 6 fireball talismans were in roughly the same position as the 6 formation plates of the heavenly fire formation. It was also a trick that Xiaohua had just thought of. Now that he tried it a little, it actually worked. Under the huge wave of air, Li Xiaoxiao's protective brilliance was gradually annihilated. At this moment, in the dark green waves, a thin black light leisurely rose with the wind and waves. It was Xiaohua's black iron needle. Although Li Xiaoxiao was in a perilous situation, she didn't panic. Just as her defenses were about to be breached under the pressure of the air wave, she flicked her horsetail whisk and a light blue water ripple appeared around her. The moment the water ripple appeared, the temperature around Li Xiaoxiao immediately dropped, washing away the heat wave from the fireball talisman without a trace. Alas, water restrains fire. My fireball talisman is precisely restrained by her magic. Seeing the water ripple appear, Xiaohua knew that the black iron needle couldn't succeed. His Buddhist sense spread out, and the black iron needle was drawn into the water ripple again. At this time, Xiaohua had the white dust, illumination, and spirit crow fire net in his hands. Unfortunately, apart from the white dust, he didn't refine the spirit crow fire net, and illumination seemed to only be able to look and not attack. Xiaohua was somewhat at his wit's end. I can't take out the devil spear tip, right? Xiaohua secretly muttered. How about I rely on flying techniques to get rid of this Li Xiaoxiao? Just as he was thinking, he saw Li Xiaoxiao's horsetail whisk move again. This time, however, it was different. Unexpectedly, more than 10 thin streams of water separated from the water ripple, and the color was even deeper blue. It's not over yet. Xiaohua urged the white dust. The earthen yellow brilliance didn't attack. It flew to the top of Xiaohua's head and fell in all directions, wrapping Xiaohua in it. Haha, seeing Xiaohua's defense, Li Xiaoxiao laughed tenderly. More than 10 streams of water hit the light curtain. Ka ka ka, a series of crisp sounds rang out, and the light curtain actually began to freeze. Not good, Xiaohua thought to himself. With a wave of his hand, he was about to withdraw the brilliance and fly far away. However, under Li Xiaoxiao's control, the water streams actually formed a sparkling ice ball around Xiaohua, completely sealing Xiaohua inside. Hehe, you want to trap me just like this? Xiaohua sneered. With a wave of his hand, a wisp of purple flame quietly appeared. However, that flame had only just appeared before it was extinguished. Xiaohua smiled and said, It's just a battle of magical powers, nothing grand. Is there a need for this young master to reveal everything? Then, Xiaohua's voice was heard. Senior sister, I beg for mercy. Senior sister is really resourceful. I admire you. Haha, it's nothing. You're just at the early stage of Qi refinement level 12 and can already fight with I for so long. If you cultivate for a few more years, you won't necessarily be any worse than I when you reach the late stage of Qi refinement level 12. Seeing this, Li Xiaoxiao swung her horsetail whisk and said, "Actually, you're still at a disadvantage in terms of magic tools. Wait until your cultivation increases in the future. You can ask your master to find a better magic tool. And thank you for the reminder, senior sister." "Good. Take out your token," Li Xiaoxiao said. "Use your magic power, and you'll be teleported to Thunder Temple." "Yes, this disciple understands." Xiao Hua took out his token. As soon as his magic power flowed, he was immediately teleported out. After that, Xiao Hua didn't know how long he fought. Once again, he changed several hundred illusions. Each illusion was different. There were mountain ranges, caves, forests, slopes, and even the starry sky, the bottom of the sea, and magma. His opponents also changed several hundred times. There were men and women, handsome and ugly, but they were all in the 12th layer of Qi refinement level. Moreover, more than half of them were in the 12th layer of Qi refinement. These people had different magic tools and were good at different techniques. Fighting with these opponents really benefited Xiao Hua a lot. Not only did his fighting experience soar, but his control over magic tools also improved a lot. Of course, in these several hundred battles, Xiao Hua didn't completely reveal his true abilities. When facing opponents below the late 12th layer of Qi refinement, Xiao Hua used magic tools to fight. Generally, he was able to smoothly kill them. When facing opponents in the late 12th layer of Qi refinement, if the opponent's magic tool was powerful, Xiao Hua would use the flying technique to fight with them. His flying technique was so powerful that even Foundation establishment cultivators couldn't catch up to him. He also didn't need to use all of his magic power. He only needed to make the opponent's magic tool unable to catch up to him. However, when it was the end of the selection, not only did Xiao Hua encounter Sun Shu, he also encountered Wang Yunxiao, Yuan Bo, and Min Gu, who were in the late 12th layer of Qi refinement. However, as it happened, he didn't encounter the disciple that Cultivator spoke of. Of course, when Xiao Hua saw Sun Shu, he didn't say anything. He directly took out his token and used his magic power to teleport out. Since the other party didn't give him any face, why should he ask? Xiao Hua didn't know. Sun Shu stared at his back for a long time with an indescribable expression on his face. 7. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.